You see that? Fire is catching, and if we burn, you burn with us! Natalie, this is not the reason we bought the Mockingjay costume. Fine, I'll get in my place for the recap. Thank you. I'm just gonna do the intro real fast and then I'll send them right to you. Oh, hi, you'll be with her in a second to cover all of Mockingjay. And unlike Lionsgate, I'll cover the whole book in one part. Lionsgate, I love you, please don't take that personally. This is the last book in the main Hunger Games trilogy, and I'm gonna need you to prepare yourself right now because Suzanne Collins does not hold the punches in this book. Your heart will be broken over and over and over again. One last thing before I send you into the recap. If you have liked these recap videos, go ahead and like this video, subscribe, turn on those notifications if you want. All that stuff helps out this channel so much, and I really do greatly appreciate it. But without any further ado, let me send you over to Recap Natalie. You're probably wondering what happened to District 12, because Catching Fire ends with, there is no more District 12. Luckily, our girl Katniss has our back here, and she starts filling us in right away. Well, firstly, 90% of the population of District 12 is dead. They're no more. And the only reason anybody made it out of 12 is because of Gale. As soon as Katniss was lifted from the arena, the Capitol cut the power in 12. Nobody celebrated, nobody protested, or did anything in the district, but 15 minutes later, hovercrafts came in and started blowtorching the place and dropping firebombs. Gale got over 800 people into the meadow. He had 2 bows, a fishing net, and some knives to keep everybody alive. But luckily, 3 days later, District 13 showed up in hovercrafts to save them. And District 13 was more than happy to take in these 800 people from 12 because they had just recently had a smallpox epidemic break out in District 13, killing a lot of their children and making a lot of people there infertile. So basically, they just got new breeding stock. Now, where's Katniss right now, you may ask? Obviously, she's in District 13. No, she's back in District 12 because it was one of her requests for her to cooperate with them for whatever they are planning for her to do. Katniss overall is not doing too well. She's currently recovering from a concussion in the game still that she got from Joanna just smashing the spool of wire into her head to knock her out to save her, but concussion effects last for a while, so she gets confused quite often, and when she gets into the state, she has to just recite to herself the facts that she knows. And it goes a little something like, my name is Katniss Everdeen, I am 17 years old, my home is District 12, I was in the Hunger Games, I escaped, the Capitol hates me, Peeta was taken prisoner, he is thought to be dead, he's most likely dead. It is better if he is dead. Which I must say, this was a very clever way by Suzanne Collins to remind readers on what is going on right now, because we are in such a different stage of the story, because the last 2 books, they were focused on the Hunger Games and a smaller part of the world, and now it has expanded so much, she is recentering us to be like, okay, here's where we are, we're gonna go from here together, it's gonna be okay, just trust me on this. As Katniss is saying all of this out loud in the meadow, she's interrupted by Gale over the comms, who is like, hey, do I need to come down there? Because without her realizing, she is like crouched down and is like huddled up. So, you know, she doesn't look like she's doing too well. That's because she's not. She has had to walk over bones of people she blames herself for killing. I don't know why they let a mentally unstable 17-year-old who feels so guilty about all of this come and walk through this by herself. Like, I know she requested it, but I feel like we should have been like, no, you need somebody down there with you. This is not something she should be doing on her own. No, no, no. She's already not doing well, so she decides, I'm gonna go to Peeta's family's bakery, or at least where it was, because it's not standing anymore. None of Peeta's family made it out. They're not in District 13, so the only person Peeta could come back to at this point is Katniss. After seeing his house and all the dead bodies and everything, she is done with this horror scene and starts running away. This is when she passes by Madge's house. And that doesn't help because Madge is also unaccounted for. Madge is dead. She's not with us anymore. She didn't get to say goodbye to her one friend outside of this Hunger Games world. She finally makes it to the Victor's Village, which has just been left untouched, and bolts into her house, closing the door behind her. She begins to have another breakdown. I don't even think she finished the other one, so she's just really adding on to the breakdown she was already having because people won't stop talking to her about all the plans they have to make her the face of the rebellion. But Katniss is just a very traumatized 17-year-old that wants to feel safe. But that is a luxury that she does not have. Plus, she has no faith in herself that she will be good at being the symbol of the rebellion. And it doesn't help that after she was walking out of a meeting with a bunch of people one day, President Coyne, the president of District 13, said, I told you we should have gotten Peeta. But they didn't get Peeta. They got Katniss, Finnick, and Beetee out of that arena. And they want to make these 2 rebel leaders as well. But Finnick over here is unconscious most of the day, and even when he's up, he doesn't really understand what you're saying to him. Finnick Odair is so depressed right now. Because the only thing that Finnick can focus on is the fact that the Capitol has the love of his life, Annie Cresta, to use against him. That is the only reason they have her. They know she doesn't have any information about the rebellion. They are keeping her to taunt Finnick. She is the one person that he truly loves. She is the one person that loves him, not just for his looks, but for him. She means everything to him, and he has fallen apart without her. I could talk about these two all day, clearly, but I'm gonna try to move on now. I love them so much. Now, Katniss is still holding a grudge over a lot of people, but she has basically forgiven Finnick because he's in the exact same situation she is. She may not know that she's really in love with Peeta, but she knows she cares about him a lot. And they just have Peeta to hold over her at this point. They thought he might know stuff about the rebellion at the beginning, but they definitely know he doesn't know anything at this point. Plus, Finnick basically just cries all the time, so it's really hard to stay mad at a guy who's just sobbing most of the day. Katniss has pulled herself together a little bit and starts moving through the downstairs of her house, collecting mementos, the picture of her parents on their wedding day, some medicinal herbs, and then her family book that Peeta had helped her add on to just last year. Katniss then hears a hiss from behind her. She turns around, and of course, she sees Buttercup, Primrose's cat, because obviously the cat made it through everything that happened. After a little convincing and using Prim's name, she does get Buttercup situated in her hunting bag so she can take him back to District 13 and reunite him with Prim. And as an animal lover, let me just tell you right now, every time Prim and Buttercup are reunited, tears. So many tears. She heads upstairs now, grabs her father's hunting jacket, and as she's about to go back down, she smells something and her body reacts before she even knows what she's smelling. But then she sees, on her dresser, a vase of dead flowers, but there is one fresh white rose in the middle. Obviously, this is from President Snow, but the question is, when did it get here? And how did he know that she would come back? She sprints out of that house because she doesn't know if this means that the Capitol is here right now and they could be coming to get her. Once she's back on the plane, though, it is confirmed that nobody was there. The airspace was cleared the entire time. She finally starts to calm down once she knows that the airspace is clear and she knows that she's not going to die today and she didn't just get everybody else killed that came here with her to District 12. Now with Katniss safe on a plane, running away from President Snow's rose, let's talk a little more about District 13. The place they're headed back to right now. Firstly, Bonnie and Twelve, who we met in the last book, they didn't make it there. Sad, I know, but it's just the truth. We never see them again in these books. 13 has just been growing underground for the past 70 years. That's why nobody knew they existed. And yes, it had indeed been the place for the Capitol's nuclear development. So what happened was the Capitol had nukes, District 13 had nukes, and to keep themselves safe, District 13 basically offered to play dead so they wouldn't just end up nuking each other and killing the entire population. Yes, this means that they did abandon the other districts during the rebellion, but it also means that Panem didn't turn into a nuclear wasteland. So basically, they decided that the Capitol still ruling over everybody was better than everybody being dead. So yeah, unfortunately, they kind of made the best option. And you have to think they didn't know that the Hunger Games were going to become a thing. They knew that the Capitol regime was going to keep happening, but they could never have predicted that they would invent the Hunger Games. Now, 13 runs a tight schedule. You get your schedule printed on your arm daily, and then at your nightly shower, the ink breaks down somehow in the water at that time, and it washes right off so you can get a new schedule the next day to follow. Katniss makes it back to 13, safe and sound. She finds her mother and Primrose back in her room for reflection hour, which very quickly turns into, oh my gosh, Buttercup is alive hour. Prim just scoops her cat up and starts weeping, which is the only appropriate response, really. Like, that's what I would do. A little while later, Katniss is walking to dinner with Gale, and then his communicuff starts beeping. It's basically like a smartwatch that President Coin will give the people that she wants easy access to so she can summon them very quickly. Gale turns to Katniss and goes, "We're needed in command," the both of them. They make it to the command room to see a Capitol broadcast on with Caesar Flickerman ready to interview someone. Katniss is watching this without a second thought. She figures it's some Capitol leader, whatever, until the camera pans and shows Peeta. She lets out a gasp/groan. Just imagine the sound of somebody's heart shattering completely. Yeah, that's the sound she makes. She looks over Peeta so carefully, expecting to see signs of torture, but he looks perfectly fine. Honestly, he looks flawless. Caesar starts this interview asking Peeta about what happened during the last day of the games. Peeta starts talking about what it was like to truly be in there, the horror of the Hunger Games, which is something that's never talked about on an actual national broadcast. And this is such a clear sign to me that the Capitol is trying to be like, oh, yeah, we'll change, maybe. I don't know. If you stop rebelling, maybe we won't have the Hunger Games. They're lying. This is propaganda. This is one of the first propaganda things we see in this book. There has been so much propaganda throughout the other books. Propaganda is not always just an obvious TV ad spot of propaganda. No, it's in little things like this, in our day-to-day lives too. Watch out for it. It's everywhere. Anyways, they get to the part where Katniss blows up the force field. Woo! Fireworks, yay! The Capitol's obviously so happy about this, that a 17-year-old outsmarted them, or it appeared that a 17-year-old outsmarted them, but like, not really. See, peeta actually doesn't think that Katniss was the one to do it. He doesn't think she would do that because she didn't know anything about the rebellion, and Caesar has to convince him that no, that really was Katniss who did that. But peeta is still adamant because she wasn't part of any rebel plan. They just wanted to keep each other alive, and he's completely right in that. Caesar places a hand on peeta going, all right, I believe you. He doesn't believe you. He's lying. He's just trying to calm you down. I saw a comment on a random Hunger Games post that was still defending Caesar Flickerman, and I'm like, in the year of 2025, we're still doing that? We still think he's a good guy because he's charismatic with all the tributes that come through that are going to die, and he knows are going to die, and he knows a lot of stuff, and Mockingjay proves that. He is not a bottom tier person. He is at the top of the food chain. He is the news media. He is in charge of a lot of the propaganda. Okay, anyways, how many times can I rant about Caesar Flickerman? He then asked peeta about Haymitch. He doesn't know anything about Haymitch. And speaking of Haymitch, he's not here right now because Haymitch is just drying out somewhere in District 13 because they don't have alcohol there. Any form of it. Not for fun occasions or anything. They don't really have fun occasions. But like, there's no alcohol in here. And this man is a raging alcoholic. So he's going through awful withdrawals right now. He then goes, I was going to ask your thought on the war, but you seem upset. peeta's like, no, I can talk. He goes, I want everybody to think about the war and what this means for human beings. Because human beings have already gone extinct fighting a war once before. And now there are even fewer of them. He keeps going on about this for a while, about how they can't keep fighting one another, and if they don't lay down their weapons soon, then it's all over. Caesar's like, are you calling for a ceasefire? And yes, peeta is calling for a ceasefire. This is when Katniss starts hearing people behind her start calling him a traitor, an enemy. They don't like him anymore. Katniss can't stand this, and she knows she needs to get out of here now. And as she starts to walk away, Coin tells her, you have not been dismissed. Boggs, one of the military leaders down here, tries to grab her and stop her, but she yanks her arm from him and sprints and hides in the supply closet. She's hidden in this supply closet many a times, and once she's settled in there, she curls up and says, you're alive, you're alive, you're alive. Talking about peeta. Until right now, they had no confirmation on how peeta was doing or if he was alive at all. After a little while, Gale comes into the supply closet with blood trickling down his nose. He explains that he got in the way of Boggs when he tried to go after Katniss. She's worried they're going to punish Gale for this because, again, District 13 is very strict. It is a military protocol. Nothing goes by without some form of punishment if you do something dumb. In response to this, though, he just holds up his hand, showing that there's no more communicuff on his wrist. They end up sitting there for a while, just talking like they used to. See, since they got to District 13, Gale has dropped the whole, I don't want to be around you unless you're gonna kiss me act that he had in the last book. So he's actually a good friend to Katniss right now. She's ranting about how District 13 left all the other districts to suffer. Gale is explaining to her they had to wait for the right time or the rebellion would fail. They needed her. She goes, no, they needed peeta, but apparently they forgot about that. peeta has always been the one that has been good with his words. Katniss, not so much. She kind of just stands there and accidentally became the face of the rebellion. She doesn't really know how this happened, but it happened. After she says this, Gale gets very serious, and he goes, peeta may have done a lot of damage tonight with what he said, because there are still districts where the rebellion is shaky. Now, of course, the ceasefire is Snow's idea, but it seems a lot more reasonable coming out of peeta's mouth. People trust peeta. They're talking through why peeta would have said this, though, because remember, back in the Capitol, peeta was talking about a rebellion. He's ready to fight. He knows what is going on is not right. He would not be calling for a ceasefire. Gale's best guess is that he's doing this to still try to protect Katniss, that he worked out some type of deal that if they were able to get a ceasefire, that Katniss would still be able to live. It finally clicks into place for her that the games are still happening. They haven't stopped. She is now just a piece in a much bigger game. She starts grabbing everything and putting back together the storage closet and says, There can't be a ceasefire. We can't go back to how things used to be. He doesn't know what happened to District 12. Peeta doesn't know that his family was just bombed and destroyed by the Capitol, that his whole home was destroyed, that 90% of the people he knew in his life are dead because of the Capitol. Gale is helping her pick everything back up, and he starts going on about how he would kill every person in the Capitol with a press of a button with zero hesitation if he could. Look, I see where he's coming from, but also, just note this. Just note this. This might be the start of his downfall right here. Because something Gale lacks is empathy, and not everybody in the Capitol is this evil villain that he's made up in his mind. You have to think there's people like Plutarch, there was people like Cinna, you have the victors that want to go against the Capitol. Yes, they're from the districts, but people also associate them with the Capitol. There's even Effie, who is a Capitol citizen that's helping with the games, but she's starting to wake up to it. Not everybody in the Capitol is evil. There's probably more people on their side than he knows, but he doesn't have any empathy for them, and this is a common theme we see throughout this book. It's something he needs to work on. Getting back to what Katniss was originally saying about how there can't be a ceasefire, he asks her, "What are you going to do?" She thinks about it and says, "I'm going to be their Mockingjay." Roll credits, that's the end of the book. Actually, just roll credits on chapter 3. That was a bad joke, I'm so sorry. You're in too deep now to leave though, so you have to stay and go through the rest of this with me. Katniss that night is just lying awake in her bed, watching her mother and Prim sleep in the other bed, because it's pretty hard for Katniss to share a bed because she still does the whole thrashing around in her sleep because of the awful nightmare she has basically every night. She gets up and walks over to the dresser and grabs the little pearl that Peeta had given her in the 75th games and starts just rolling it around in her hand. It's kind of like a fidget toy for Katniss, but it's so much more than that because this is the last thing that Peeta gave her. Prim wakes up, sees Katniss, and goes, "What's wrong?" Katniss, shutting out Prim and her mother like normal, is like, "It's nothing, it was just a bad dream, go back to sleep." But Prim knows her sister a little too well, so she climbs out of her bed and goes and sits right next to Katniss. She grabs the spare blanket at the end of Katniss's bed and wraps them both in it and says, "You could tell me, you know. I'm good at keeping secrets." This right here is when Katniss realizes that the little girl she knew is gone. Prim is much more grown up now. So Katniss decides to tell her that tomorrow morning, she's going to agree to become the Mockingjay. She asks her, "Is it because you want to, or because you feel forced to?" She just laughs a little and says, "Well, I guess both." Because she's afraid that if she chooses to do this, that the rebels will end up executing Peeta because he's a traitor in their eyes now. She has to explain to Katniss just how important she is to them, to the rebellion, and advises her to make a list of demands to become their Mockingjay. Katniss only sees one problem with this. If they only agree upon this in private, she has no guarantee that they will actually keep their word. But she quickly decides that she will have to make Coin announce this in front of everybody in District 13 to hold her and her people accountable. Prim is like, "That right there is a good idea. There you go. This is how you use your power correctly here, Katniss." Katniss now starts feeling a little bit of peace with the solution they've come up with and says, "I should start waking you up more often, little duck." And Prim just says, "I wish you would." They're so cute. Their sister relationship is just, it's so sweet. It's so sweet. She wakes up the next day, goes to breakfast with Gale like normal. They're talking about how they both really miss the woods, and she's like, "Oh, I could make that a condition of me being the Mockingjay, that we get to go out and hunt in the woods." They're heading to the meeting. Is Gale supposed to be coming to this meeting? No, but Katniss wants him there, so Gale is coming to this meeting because he is a simp for Katniss. We all know this, okay? On their way there, Gale is also like, "Hey, you should probably add that you get to keep Buttercup to that list because I have a feeling that District 13, who doesn't waste anything, doesn't like the idea of having a house cat." They make it to the meeting, and Katniss is like, "I want a piece of paper." She gets her piece of paper, and she starts writing down all her demands. She's just sitting there staring at all the demands she's written down, feeling like she's missed something, and then she finally writes, "I get to kill Snow." And then she's like, "Perfect." Plutarch coughs and is like, "You about done there?" Because without her realizing it, 20 minutes has gone by, so it's just been a room full of people watching her write down this list. I just can't imagine them all just staring at Katniss like, I mean, I know she's had a concussion, but like, I feel like this is taking longer than it should. I don't know, should we say something? I don't know, maybe. And then Plutarch's like, "Are you about done down there?" That's how the scene plays out in my head. You're welcome. She sits up straight and says, "Okay, here's the deal. I'll be your Mockingjay." Then lets everybody in the room celebrate for a little bit. But Coin doesn't celebrate. She just sits back still looking at Katniss because she knows there's more. Once everybody is quieted down, she says, but I have some conditions. She starts off with saying, my sister gets to keep her cat. Now, this is her smallest request, and it causes an argument to break out. But finally, they agree that her family will move up to one of the rooms on the top floor with a little window that Buttercup can go out of and hunt his own food. And they'll get a little box of sand for him to use as a litter box. She's like, okay. And then I would like to hunt in the woods with Gale. Plutarch doesn't love this idea, but Coin is the one that says no. Give them 2 hours a day to go in the woods. They can have a 1/4-mile radius, and we'll give them tracker anklets. Then she's like, my bestie's gotta be with me while I'm doing all this Mockingjay stuff. And Coin's like, okay, do you want him to be your new lover? Mind you, she is 17 years old. Plutarch jumps in saying, no, it would be bad for appearances if it looks like she's already abandoned Peeta. That is the only concern he has with this plan of her being lovers with Gale. They move on from this mess. Katniss is left completely disgusted that they think she could just move on from Peeta that easily. Finally, she says, when the war is over and if we've won, Peeta is pardoned. And she is met with dead silence. She goes on saying no form of punishment will be inflicted. That goes for the other captured tributes, Joanna and Inabaria. Now you may be thinking, Katniss doesn't even like that lady. And you would be absolutely right, but it feels wrong to leave her out. Coin flat out says, no. Katniss shoots back, yes. It's not their fault that you abandoned them for the capital to capture. Coin goes, they will be treated as war criminals and be punished as the tribunal sees fit. Katniss starts standing up now, saying they will be guaranteed immunity. And you will personally pledge this in front of the people of 13 and the remainder of the people from 12 today. And it will be recorded to hold yourself accountable, or you will find another Mockingjay. Now this is where I need to introduce you to Flavia. This is Plutarch's director from the Capitol. So you may notice Effie isn't here. She's actually in the Capitol. She's never in District 13 in the books. This is something that I actually really loved that the movie does. It has Effie replace Flavia, who just randomly shows up in Mockingjay, as this assistant to Plutarch. It makes a lot of sense, and I really do prefer it, but Flavia over here is like, that's our girl! That's her! Eventually, Coin says, all right, but you better perform. Coin instructs them to call an assembly during reflection time, and then asks Katniss if she has anything else to add. And Katniss simply says, I get to kill Snow. Coin has a hint of smile and goes, I'll flip you for it. Once the meeting is officially over, Plutarch slides a sketchbook over to Katniss and says, I know you don't really want to do this, but I hope this will help. She opens it to find a stunningly designed black uniform that could have only been designed by Cinna. Cinna knew all along what they were working towards, and on the last page of this little folder wrote, I'm still betting on you. I am unwell. He designed this outfit a few weeks before the game started, and they have it here. They also have a new fancy bow waiting for her down in the armory with Beetee. Right here, we get confirmed what we already knew, basically, from the other books, but Cinna has always been a part of this rebel plan. There has been people underground in the Capitol for a long time working on this rebel plan. Plutarch has worked his way up for years. District 13 has not been working alone on this. Achilles Mulligan! Plutarch starts going over the plan with her that they have to launch an airtime assault. Now, the Capitol may have sole control of the broadcast, but Beetee was the one to redesign this broadcast channel about 10 years ago. So they should be able to push the propos, short for propaganda spots, in front of the entire country. Then they start ushering her out of the room, saying they have yet another surprise for her. They go down 30 floors. Now, Katniss is going down the whole time. Mind you, she doesn't like being underground because that's how her father died in a mining accident underground. This is not a great time, and now they're like, let's go even farther down. Once they reach this floor that they're on, she is instantly put off by it. Because as soon as they leave the elevator, a metal grate slides down in front of the doors as well. This doesn't happen on any other floor. Plutarch goes to the guard trying to say they are looking for a room, but he is cut off by the guard saying, you have the wrong floor. Plutarch double checks his notes saying, no, it's room 3908, and is asking the guard, can you not just call up for permission? But the guard just again tells them to leave, but Katniss can literally see the door that Plutarch talked about. Then she hears a tiny whimper behind it that is definitely human. Her and Gale make eye contact and know they have to get to that door, so she drops the sketchbook. The guard goes down for it, but Gale also does, bumping heads with the guard. He's like, oh, sorry about that, and grabs the guard's arm, turning him subtly away from the door that Katniss wants to get to. So she runs to the door 3908. And when she opens it, she finds her bruised prep team shackled to the wall. The room also smells awful. Clearly they haven't been washed and they've just been left to pee on the floor, and she can smell the infection on them. When Flavius and Octavia see her, they shrink back against the wall, like they think she is going to hurt them. She slowly crosses to Vina, who has always been the bravest of them, and asks her, what happened? She simply says, they took us from the capital the night you broke out. Plutarch comes into the room saying Cinna requested it. He thought it would be a comfort to you. She turns on him going, Cinna requested this? Because she knows he would have never requested for them to be treated like this. They were not evil people. She asks Plutarch why they're being treated like criminals. Plutarch admits he doesn't know and turns to the guard at the door, asking why they're being punished when he was just told they would be confined. The guard just says, for stealing food, like this is a normal punishment for stealing some food. Vina explains no one had told them anything, they were starving, so they took an extra slice of bread. Octavia begins sobbing. Katniss goes over to comfort her. Meanwhile, this guard is confused on how they're confused about why they're being punished like this for stealing a slice of bread. She starts demanding for them to be unchained, planning to take them to her mother, because her mother is the only doctor she trusts to take care of them. The guard starts arguing that he doesn't have orders to do that, and Plutarch steps in saying, on my authority, unchain them. They get them out and take them directly to her mother. Her mother looks at them alarmed. And her mother has seen a lot of stuff. It's not alarmed at what they look like. I mean, of course, that's alarming, but it's more alarming that this is happening in District 13. Katniss, Gale, Plutarch, and Flavia all sit down on a bench outside of the hospital quarters. Katniss goes, well, I guess we have all been put on notice. Flavia and Plutarch don't understand, and she goes, what they did to my prep team was a warning. And it wasn't just a warning to her, it was a warning to all of them to remind them on who was really in charge here. And that their capital pedigree means nothing here. Plutarch is arguing that they're more needed for the war effort than she's giving them credit for. She's like, oh yeah, just how the tributes were necessary for the games and then they were disposable. No one says anything after this until her mother comes out, saying that her prep team will be all right and that there's no permanent injuries. After Plutarch asks her about it, her mother explains they can probably start working tomorrow, but they're going to be emotionally unstable, obviously. Katniss now knows her prep team is in good hands with her mother, and then she realizes that up next on her schedule is training, which now means 2 hours out in the woods with Gale. So they go running to the armory like a couple of kids. They get out of the District 13 fence and they end up just sitting there enjoying the sun for a little bit. After they have hunted and Gale is cleaning off the game, he asks her why she cares so much about her prep team, since they have literally just been preparing her for slaughter. She explains that it's more complicated than that. They're not evil or cruel people, or really even smart. It's honestly more like hurting children than anything. She's trying to explain that they don't see the games like they do, but she can't find the right words to say it. Gale jumps in saying, your trio of freaks doesn't understand that the tributes are the real children here. They didn't know they were going there for their amusement. Was that a big secret in the capital? She starts saying, no, but they don't view it the way we do. He jumps in asking, are you actually defending them? Now Gale may be overstepping here, and another area where he's just lacking empathy completely for any capital citizen. He views them all under one light, which is never the case. But anybody who has hurt your friend, you're going to overreact and you're going to absolutely hate their guts. I think this is a very realistic reaction because when somebody hurts your friend may be more understanding than you are after it because you're just from the outside. You don't have as much empathy for the situation or these people. You don't know these people. You just know they hurt somebody you care about and you hate them for it. This does hurt Katniss though, and she doesn't even really know why she's defending them. She knows what they did was wrong, but again, they don't see it the same way they do. And so she finally just says, I guess I'll defend anybody who gets treated like that over a piece of bread. Gale says, I'm not looking for a fight, but he goes on saying, I don't think Coin was trying to send a message by punishing them for breaking the rules. I think she thought you would see it as a favor. Now, we've already seen it a little bit in this book, but Gale is so blind to his hatred of the capital, he doesn't realize that he is just helping another power-hungry person get into leadership. As much as I rant about Gale, this is a moment where he truly is just an 18-year-old getting manipulated into trusting another form of leadership that's saying they're going to help him when they probably won't. They're all manipulating him because he's probably the best shot they have at manipulating Katniss. He doesn't know he's doing this, but he is just a stepping stone in their plan to get her fully on their side. They walk back in silence until Katniss starts saying, during the quarter quell, Octavia and Flavius had to quit because they couldn't stop crying while they were working on me. And Vina could barely say goodbye. He goes, I'll keep them in mind as they remake you. And she says, do. Time for Coin to make this announcement in front of everybody. Katniss goes over to stand by Finnick, who, in her words, looks dazed but gorgeous. I don't know if what I'm about to say is gonna make Suzanne Collins write another book. I hope it's not. I mean it with the utmost respect. But she wanted to make sure that everybody knew that Finnick Odair was a baddie. Okay? That's all she wanted to do. Maybe there might be another book getting written right now, just for saying that sentence. Anyways, he's just standing there knotting a short length of rope for a reason. I'm not going to talk much more about that, but yeah. That's the mental state Finnick is in. Katniss has to make a couple attempts before she does get Finnick's attention. And he asks, why are we meeting here? She explains she told Coin she would be the Mockingjay, but she made Coin promise that she would grant the other tributes immunity, if the rebels win. Notice how she doesn't say if we win. She doesn't see herself as one of them. She's obviously going to fight with them, but she doesn't fully agree with the leadership here. Finnick, in response to this, goes, oh good, I was so worried about Annie. And Katniss is like, oh no. Because she totally forgot about Annie also being there. So she makes an excuse and runs over to Coin and is like, yo, you gotta add Annie Cresta to the list or we don't got a deal. You gotta put Annie Cresta there, please. Coin says, oh, we don't make a habit of punishing anybody that frail. Where was her prep team just now? Did they look like they were mentally well? Katniss thinks about her prep team and goes, yeah, so it shouldn't be a problem to add her. She's not risking this. She's not gonna play games with this woman. Once she sees that Coin has added Annie to the list, she walks back over to Finnick. Coin tells everybody about Katniss's request. Not everybody is happy about this. Remember, they really don't like Peeta right now. He just called for a ceasefire. This may have caused some problems for them. But then Coin keeps going on, saying, but in return for this unprecedented request, Soldier Everdeen has promised to devote herself to our cause. And any deviance from her mission in motive or deed will be viewed as a break in the agreement, and the immunity would be terminated, leaving the lives of the 4 victors in the hands of District 13. So basically, if Katniss steps out of line, they're all dead. As you can tell, Coin's a really great leader. We should totally be trying to get her in charge of the country. Okay, cool. Continuing on. The next day, she is with her prep team, and they are told by Flavia to remake her to Beauty Base 0. Now, Katniss thought she had escaped this life, but apparently the rebels on TV have to look good. Venia has to assure the others as they work that Katniss will not hurt them. They are just like little puppies. Things are going well until they get to the place that Joanna cut open her arm with the knife to get her tracker out. It's just a mess of scar tissue. And eventually, after they've talked over it for a while, they call in Flavia and Plutarch and they're like, we'll just put a band over it or something. After they are done getting her ready, they all walk to the dining hall together. As they are walking down, people are gasping, pointing at them, calling them names, and Katniss is just telling them to ignore them. After going for all of that, finally making it to the dining hall, they sit down, and Posey, Gale's little sister, scoots over towards them until she's right next to Octavia and touches her skin, saying, "You're green. Are you sick?" Katniss explains to Posey it's a fashion thing. Octavia, as she's holding back tears, says, "It's meant to be pretty." And then little sweet Posey pauses and says, "I think you'd be pretty in any color." Ah! It's one of the first nice interactions they've had with somebody besides Katniss down in this random hole in the ground they've been shoved into. And this interaction with this little girl probably gave them more hope in the rebel cause than anything else they've seen. Gale is doing his best at the table now to keep the conversation going because last night these two had an argument over what President Coin did. His whole point was Coin couldn't look like she was caving into Katniss's request, and they also don't know what damage Peeta is caused by the ceasefire. We're still going back to that. Her argument was she couldn't have just let the other tributes take their chances because that's already what District 13 has done to them, and then she slammed her door in Gale's face, so kind of deserved. Been a long time coming. What can I say? I would also like to slam a door in Gale's face. Pretty please. Give me the opportunity. After lunch, Gale goes to Katniss and says, "You're still angry." And Katniss, being the icon that she is and the reason I am the way I am, goes, "And you're still not sorry." Oh! Reminder to use that comeback in your day-to-day life because it's very valid. Gale still stands by what he said though, and Katniss gives him some solid advice and says, "Well, you should rethink it and come up with the right opinion." Anyways, they're in their lovely argument face again. Isn't it just wonderful? Aren't we so glad we're back here? I feel like a mom who her children have been fighting a lot, and I'm just like, enough! Stop fighting! Why are you always fighting? That's the mood I'm in with these two right now. But I'm more just mad at Gale. I have a favorite child and it's Katniss. They make it down to the armory though, and they find Beetee, who is in a wheelchair from the damage he sustained in the arena. But he can still walk a little, he just doesn't have a lot of strength. Him and Katniss catch up, and then him and Gale start talking about trap ideas that he has for animals that possibly they could use for humans. As they're walking over to the new bows that Beetee has designed for them, he asks how Finnick is doing, and she's like, "Noel." And he says, if you know what Finnick had been through these past few years, you would know it's remarkable that he's still with us at all. We're gonna get more into what Beetee just said about Finnick later. We'll come back to it, I promise. Now it's just not the time for that. He's just alluding to some stuff. A lot of you already know what he's talking about, but for those of you who really have no clue what's going on in the Hunger Games, give me a minute. We'll get to it. It's probably gonna be more than a minute. I'm gonna be honest. But anyways, he does inform them that he has designed a new trident for Finnick, so maybe that would be a good distraction for him. So he tells them to tell Finnick to come down and meet and chat with him. There are some bows on the wall with so many sights and gadgets and everything, and Beetee asks Gale if he wants to try any of them, and Gale absolutely would. Katniss goes, I don't think that's fair to the deer, man. And Gale calmly says, I wouldn't be using it on deer. Okay, Gale. Beetee goes BRB because he's got to go grab Katniss's bow. And also, these two are probably about to start fighting again. As soon as the door closes behind Beetee, she asks, so it'd be easy for you to shoot people? Gale's like, did I say that? I'm just saying, if I had a bow like this, I could have stopped a lot of things from happening, and I would have done it without hesitation. She's like, okay, fair point. But she also knows that Gale doesn't know what it's like to actually kill someone. She does. This is when Beetee comes back, though, with a case and hands it to her. When she opens it, she finds a stunning black bow. With curves she describes like a bird's wing. She also feels this bow humming and asks, why is it doing that? If you don't shoot bows like bows don't normally hum. I know, odd thing, but they don't. Beetee explains it's saying hello because it heard her voice. I don't think that clears anything up, Beetee. What do you mean the bow's saying hello? Basically, Coin wanted her to just have a pretty bow, but Beetee also wanted it to be useful, so he added all the fun stuff on the inside. Basically, this bow can shoot very, very far. She can shoot something from 100 yards away with this thing, apparently, and also she has fire and explosive arrows. They use the normal arrows and have some target practice inside that day with their bows. After this fun, she is back with her prep team getting ready for her first propo. She's supposed to have just been in battle, and she is in full glam makeup, full beat. While they're all just waiting around on set, Finnick is there in his hospital gown still. He's just been walking around in his hospital gown everywhere, okay? He goes, they're either going to want to kill you, kiss you, or be you. Yes, this is Effie's line from the movie. It works for both of them, okay? But Finnick is an icon for saying it originally. Credit where credit is due, okay? Katniss gets up to her place to deliver the line of, people of Panem, we fight, we dare, to end our hunger, for justice! Now, you know, these people who wrote the line, they think this line is so good, and it's just not. And then Katniss also delivers it awfully. And the whole room is just dead silent after she's done. Until Haymitch's laugh comes over the intercom and says, that, my friends, is how a revolution dies. She leaves right after he says this because she hasn't even heard his voice in months, and she is still very upset at him. The next day, they film more, and after she's done filming, she is pulled into a meeting. She figures this is a meeting so Coin can let everybody witness her failure of trying to film some propos. But to her surprise, it's actually Haymitch who welcomes everybody that he has personally invited to this meeting. So you have Coin, her people, Plutarch, Flavius, Greasy Say, Finnick, and Beetee. Oh yeah, Greasy Say is here. She's a cook in the kitchens. It's so cute. I love that she's here. Haymitch starts with showing everybody the footage that they have shot, and then after being on the same page that this footage is really bad, he asks everybody to think of one moment where Katniss genuinely moved them. It's quiet for a bit, and Katniss is ready for nobody to speak up ever about anything she has ever did, when a girl from District 12 that was in the room speaks up and says, when she volunteered for Prim, because I'm sure she thought she was going to die. Haymitch just writes it down and says, good. Then Bog speaks up saying, when she sung that song for the little girl. Octavia blurts out, I cried when she drugged Peeta to go get the medicine for him. And can you imagine how much bravery that took her to speak up in a room full of people, especially when this room includes people who are in charge of the punishment they have received. Then all the moments start flying out of people's mouths. When she took Rue as an ally, when she extended her hand to Chaff, when she tried to carry Mags, when she held out those berries is mentioned multiple times. And it means different things to different people. Haymitch goes, okay, what do all of these things have in common? Gale quietly says they were all Katniss. Nobody told her what to say. Everybody gets the point Haymitch is making now. And he goes, we have to get her out of here. We have to get her with the people. Gale points out that people think she's supposed to be pregnant. They're like, yeah, well, she almost died, so I think we could just say she lost the baby. I think that's an easy enough lie for us to continue. Boggs is arguing, saying that Katniss won't be safe, and she breaks in saying, I want to go. She's tired of being stuck down here. Coin asks her, what if you're killed? And she says, Make sure you get it on camera. They agree, and Coin tells them to take her to 8 this afternoon because it was just recently bombed, so it should be safe, and asks if anybody else has any other comments. Then Dalton, a guy from District 10 who's in the room, speaks up and says, "Wash her face. She's a girl and you made her look 35. Feels like something the Capitol would do." Dalton freaking gets it. I love Dalton. He's mentioned like a couple times in this book. But Dalton understands what's going on. Haymitch has Katniss stay back after everybody else leaves and basically gives her full permission to say whatever she wants to say to him. She only says, "I can't believe you didn't rescue Peeta." He says, "I know." She then gives Haymitch the same permission to say whatever he's wanting to say to her. And he goes, "I can't believe you let him out of your sight that night." They both go over their side of things, and he reminds her that Peeta is not dead yet. She tries to optimistically say, "We're still in the games," but her voice cracks as she's saying it. Haymitch agrees and adds, "I'm still your mentor." Tells her to do what he tells her to do, because he will be airborne as she is on the ground and will have a better view of things. They get her into her armor, and Boggs is there to escort her to the airborne division. Just as the elevator shows up to take them there, Finnick shows up in his hospital gown, looking slightly frantic, saying, "They won't let me go. I told them I'm fine, but they won't let me on the hovercraft." Mind you, he is in his hospital gown as he's saying all of this. Even Katniss doesn't think this is a good idea, so she just smacks her head and says, "Oh, I forgot. Beetee has a trident for you down in the armory." He hears the word trident, and all of a sudden, the old Finnick shows up, and he says, "Really? What's it do?" He is ready to run down there right now. Katniss just goes, Finnick, maybe some pants first." At this, he looks down at himself, and it's like he's realizing that he's in the hospital gown for the first time, so he rips it off, leaving him just standing there in his underwear, and says, "Do you find this distracting?" as he strikes a ridiculously provocative pose. She can't help but laugh, and then looks at Boggs' face and finds it even funnier because he is so uncomfortable. As the elevator door starts to close, she shouts, "I'm only human, O'Dare." I will never get over the fact that they filmed this scene and it's not in the Mockingjay movie. It is such a funny scene, and it's just showing that Finnick's like getting back to himself a little bit. It's so silly, it's so funny, and it's also so important to show their relationship. It's a key part of their relationship where they joke around and they bring out the good side in each other a lot during this book. They have such a fun like sibling dynamic. That's what Suzanne herself calls it. And again, I think I mentioned this in the last book, but they're like the bestest of friends. I love them so much. Anyways, the elevator door opens and she is greeted by rows and rows and rows of hovercrafts. She's ticked off because what do you mean they didn't do anything to help the districts when they had all of this? Boggs explains they couldn't strike a counterattack until recently. District 13 hardly stayed alive the first few years, and they didn't even know if there would be anybody left if they just started shooting back and forth for the Capitol. Katniss calls him out for sounding like Peeta, but Peeta did call for a ceasefire, so there's a little bit of a difference. She's walking onto a hovercraft, and Flavia comes over, and she's whining about them taking Katniss's makeup off, because now she doesn't look camera ready, like him, as she grabs Gale, saying, "Isn't he handsome?" Katniss doesn't know what to say. And this is when Boggs jumps in saying, "Well, don't expect us to be impressed. We just saw Finnick O'Dare in his underwear." And this right here is when Katniss decides she likes Boggs. Boggs is all right. On the plane ride over, Plutarch is giving Katniss a quick update. Basically, every district is at war with the Capitol except District 2. Yes, District 2 was part of the Hungergames, but they got more food and attention, and they're where most of the peacekeepers come from. She didn't know that peacekeepers came from District 2. She thought they were all Capitol people, but turns out it's pretty hard to get those people to commit to spend 20 years out of the Capitol where they can't have a family at all. Right now, their goal is to fully take over every district one by one, ending with 2, thus cutting off the Capitol's supply chain. This would then weaken the Capitol so they can invade. Gale asks a pretty important question of who would be in charge of the government if they win. Plutarch explains everybody will be in charge of the government because they will form a republic, where each district and the Capitol can elect their own representative to be their voice in the centralized government. Plutarch claims this has worked in the past. Mind you, Panem is where the United States of America are today. So yeah, it may have worked for a little while, but I feel like we're seeing it not work so well now. Because, I mean, do you feel like your voice is heard? Because I don't feel like mine is heard. I don't know about y'all. Katniss says in her monologue here, frankly, our ancestors don't seem like much to brag about. Look at the state they left us in. But a republic does sound better than what they have now, which is basically a dictatorship. Katniss is then like, okay, what happens if we lose? He goes, then I would expect next year's Hunger Games to be unforgettable. He then grabs a little vial from his vest, shakes a few purple pills out, and hands them to Katniss and Gale, explaining they named the pills Nightlock in her honor. See, they can't afford for anybody to get captured, so if they were to get captured, they will take this pill and... He then points out a little spot on her suit that was made just for that. It would be, it'd be like right about here, so she could lean down with her chin and bite it if need be. I don't know why I had to demonstrate that like that. I'm sure that was a really good pose of me, but that's where it is. Finally, she is dropped in 8, with Gale, Boggs, a couple of soldiers, and a camera crew as well, that consist of 2 burly men who are in these mobile camera suits that encase them, so they kind of just look like insects, so she calls them the insects. And then you also have Cressida there as their director, basically. Half of her head is shaved and she has those green vine tattoos. They got her so accurate in the movie, like one of the most accurate castings you could ask for right there. You also have her assistant Masala, who is just completely written out in the movie. We don't care about that guy. He has lots of piercings and that's all we know about him. He's not a big enough player. I didn't feel like finding a picture of a pierced man to put on there, okay? Sue me. Don't, please. They all go to a building with an H painted over at the doorway that people that were hurt in the recent bombing are being brought into. This right here is their hospital. It's really just a room where they're putting all the sick and wounded. Katniss is doing her best to get out of this right now because they want her to go in there and talk to all these people, but she's not good with sick and injured people. That is not her specialty. But they do convince her to go in because all these people need is to just talk with her. Paler, the commander of 8, greets them and brings them into the hospital. Gale is like, hey, is having all the wounded in one place smart? Gale walks into a new district and he's like, this is stupid. Paler's just like, well, it's better than letting them die, I think. When Katniss walks in, people instantly start to recognize her. And they start calling out her name. She goes from person to person saying hello, and she is just giving them so much hope by being there. Nobody has really seen her since the arena. And so many of the people here are asking her about Peeta in a concerned way. And they're like, we know he wouldn't have said that unless he was forced to. This is when she starts to realize she has never been alone in her struggle against the Capitol. All these people have been on her side, and she has been their Mockingjay long before she officially accepted that role. And it clicks that she has power with these people, something that Snow knew as soon as she held those berries up the first time, and something that Coin knows now. After they get out of the hospital, Cressida is gushing over the content they got in there. They're having a nice calm walk around 8, seeing the destruction and everything like that. Oh goody! And then all of a sudden Boggs is like, we have to get back to the ship now. Because there are incoming bombers, which is a slight problem. Yes, there were just bombers here, but now they're back. They all take off running, but within a few seconds, they see a low-flying V formation of Capitol hovercrafts, and the bombs start dropping. Katniss is blown off her feet and can tell she has been hurt in a couple spots once she's landed. She tries to get back up, but Boggs pushes her back down, protecting her with his own body. Haymitch is explaining through her earpiece that they can't land during the bombing, but she hasn't been spotted. They're not here for her. This round of bombing stops. Plutarch warns them they have about 45 seconds until the next round starts. So they start running again, trying to get to cover. They are almost at the building they want to get to when the second round of bombs start dropping, and Gale is the one this time to throw his body over Katniss to protect her. She finds herself looking directly into his eyes, and then they start talking about why are the bombers here? Because they're targeting something other than her, obviously. Then, at the same time, they both say, the hospital. They're bombing the hospital. Gale gets up shouting this to everybody, and Plutarch is telling them that their job is still just to get to the bunker, not to help. Katniss is arguing about this, and Haymitch just comes over his comm again and just says, Katniss? Then Katniss yanks out her earpiece. See, these are the problems we run into when you let a teenager be the face of your rebellion. They're not gonna listen to you. And she is valid for that right now. And then before anybody can stop her, she runs to the access ladder leading to the roof. Gale is shouting, don't stop, as he climbs up right behind her. Then she hears his boot make contact with somebody's face. Boggs, it was Boggs' face. They run over to the first nest with soldiers hiding behind it and get down with them. Paler is actually there and is like, does Boggs know you're up here? Katniss just says, he knows where we are. We may have kicked him in the face to get here, but I mean, he knows where they are. Paler offers them guns, but they got their bows with fancy arrows. Paler explains they expect 3 more waves, and right before these planes drop their bombs, they remove their sight shields to do so. So that's the window of time they have to hit these planes. Gale and Katniss decide to just go ahead, start with their fire arrows so they don't accidentally blow up a building. As the hovercrafts appear in the sky, she yells, geese! Sunrise on the reaping strikes again. Anyways, She yells geese because during migration season, they had figured out a tactic for them to shoot so they wouldn't end up shooting at the same bird. She hits a hovercraft, but it wasn't even the one she was aiming for, and it still drops its bombs. The fire really didn't do anything. It doesn't go invisible after it does this, so she's done some damage, but it wasn't enough. Paler shouts a warning now that the next wave is coming, and these two decide to switch to explosives. So they can actually shoot the hovercrafts down. She gets a direct hit on the point plane, and Gale hits another one in the tail, causing it to spin out and crash into the street. Then another wave comes. Gale gets the point plane this time. She gets one on the wing, causing it to spin into another one, and they crash on the roof of a nearby building. They see the smoke coming from the hospital now, and Paler confirms they hit it. Gale and Katniss go to head back down the ladder, but then they see Masala and one of the insects come out behind one of the air ducts. Katniss starts to like these people a little more, because they also just disrespected everybody else's wishes and followed her. Once Katniss gets down there, she is expecting a fight with everybody, but Cressida is just waving her towards the hospital, saying, "Plutarch gave us 5 minutes." As they reach the hospital, or what used to be it, they see that the bombs collapsed the roof and basically blocked off any exit, effectively trapping everybody inside. She has put her earpiece back in now, and Haymitch is telling them they can get back on the aircraft, and she asks, why would they target these people who are already dying? Gale explains it was to prevent other wounded people from seeking help. Snow only saw everybody in that building as damaged slaves. That is it. They are not people to him. They are a workforce. And this is why Gale was asking about the hospital earlier. He wasn't scared that it was going to spread disease faster or anything like that. He just truly understands the cruelty of the capital. He's able to think like the enemy. Cressida asks Katniss if she has anything to say to Snow in response to this. And this is where we get probably one of the most iconic lines out of this entire series. "You can torture us, you can bomb us, and burn our districts to the ground. But you see that? Fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us." And she has the two burning planes on the roof just in the background, and it gives me chills every time. It is so good. After they wrap on filming, Boggs grabs her arm so fast to make sure she doesn't sprint off again. And they make it back to the hovercraft, but not before Katniss pukes, and Boggs just decides to carry her the rest of the way. I love Boggs so much. She ends up falling asleep on the way back to District 13 and wakes up in her old hospital bed. Her mother is making sure she feels okay and then says, "No one even told us you were gone." And she feels so guilty because her family has had to send her off to the Hungergames twice. The least she could have done is actually say goodbye before she left for District 8. She tells her that she'll make sure that they're notified next time. She has breakfast and then she's taken in a wheelchair to a meeting. She's a little nervous about this meeting because she did disobey direct orders. And is just really hoping this wasn't enough to get their deal revoked. Because that would be really unfortunate if, like, day 2 of her being the Mockingjay, they were like, no deal. When she gets to command, Cressida, Masala, and the insects are the only ones there, and Masala just goes, "There's our little star." Katniss, being her wonderfully awkward self, just blurts out, "I've got to stop calling you guys the insects. What are your names?" To these two down here. She does explain she was calling them that because their shelled suits made them look like insects to her. Castor is the first to introduce himself, and introduces Pollux as well. She waits for Pollux to say something, but he doesn't. Then she notices that Pollux is an Avox. Gale and Coin then walk in, looking happy to be talking about whatever they were having a conversation about. Now that everyone is there, Coin calls the meeting and announces that their airtime assault has officially started. And they had 18 runs of this propo yesterday, thanks to Beetee. But they play it here again for everybody to see in this room. Her Mockingjay pin is glowing in the fire, and you hear Claudius Templesmith, he's not Ruth of Rebellion, they just used his voice. He says, "Katniss Everdeen, the girl on fire, burns on." Then it cuts to her speech in District 8. Then comes some shots of her shooting down the plane, and then text of, "If we burn, you burn with us." She can't help but be amazed because there's never been an anti-capital statement on the air. They explained that all the districts have seen it, but they couldn't quite get it to the capital yet. Quinn is very pleased with the result, but she asked them why they took such a risk letting Katniss go into combat. She's shocked because Katniss wasn't supposed to go into combat, and this means nobody told on her. They are all hiding this from Coin. All the while, Haymitch is giving her a deadly smile, and she decides to not end up in a room alone with him anytime soon. Because remember, he just told her to listen to him, and she took out her earpiece. Flavia then starts talking about her idea for a propo series called We Remember, where they would focus on a different fallen tribute in each one, and Finnick would be the one to lead these. They all tell her what a good idea this is, because she's definitely a little disappointed that she's not in charge of the propos that Katniss is doing, because that's fallen to Cressida, But this is a good way to keep the peace between them. Of course, this is not the most important thing, but now she feels like she has an important job, and she's also working with a very loved Victor. Gwen dismisses everybody now, and Katniss goes back to her hospital bed to get some rest. When she wakes up, she feels a weight at the end of her bed, and it's Haymitch just sitting there. He's dangling her headpiece in front of her, threatening to have it fitted in some metal headgear that will be attached to her face if she takes it off again. And if she finds a way to get that off, then he'll have it surgically implanted, so maybe next time she'll just keep it in. And she's like, yeah, I'll just keep the earpiece in from now on. Okay, thanks. As he leaves, he says, oh, by the way, I ate your lunch. She goes, I'm gonna report you. Of course, she absolutely isn't gonna report him. At dinner time, Finnick brings his tray over to her bed, and they sit and watch the newest propo together. After it's done, all he says is, people should know what happened, and now they do. She tells him to just turn it off before they run it again. As he's moving to turn off the TV, she cries out, wait! Because the capital seal appears, and they're introducing a special segment. Caesar Flickerman pops up again, and then they cut to Peeta, who looks very different. The healthy boy she saw just a few days ago has lost at least 15 pounds and developed a nervous tremor. They still have him prepped for the camera, but they can't hide the bags under his eyes, and they definitely can't conceal the pain he feels when he moves. Her mind is racing, trying to figure out how they could have made Peeta look like this in such a short amount of time. And finally, she lands on the fact that the first interview must have been recorded right after they got him out of the games. And ever since then, they've just been doing whatever they want to Peeta. Caesar asks him about the rumors and propos that Katniss is in. He says they're using her to encourage the rebels. Caesar's like, is there anything you would like to say? He goes, there is. Don't be a fool, Katniss. Think of yourself. They have turned you into a weapon that could lead to the destruction of humanity. If you have any real influence there, use it to pump the brakes on this before it is too late. Do you really trust these people? Do you know what's going on? And if you don't, find out. The screen goes black. Finnick turns off the TV, and they can already hear footsteps coming towards them. Finnick grabs her arm and goes, we didn't see it. She doesn't really understand what's going on right now. She's still focused on Peeta. He repeats himself saying, we didn't see Peeta. After the propo, we turned off the TV because the images upset us too much. She nods, and he goes, finish your dinner. She gets herself together, and when Plutarch comes in, her face is stuffed with food. And then they congratulate them on the propos and make sure they know that they turned the TV off right after those happened. Then everybody who came into her room leaves without even mentioning Peeta. If she had actually turned off the TV right after this propo like she originally wanted to, she would have never seen Peeta, and they would have never told her about it. Because keeping her in the dark is the best thing they can do to keep the Mockingjay running as best as possible. They don't want to distract her. Cut to the next day. Still no one has talked to her about this, not even Gale, who she has seen multiple times. And when it comes to their hunting time, Gale is busy with something else, so she gets permission to take Finnick out with her instead. They get out of earshot, ditch the communicuffs just to be safe, and then talk about what they saw last night with Peeta. Finnick confirms he hasn't heard anything about it either, and now they're trying to figure out why no one is telling them. But they can't really figure it out. This doesn't make any sense to them. And then the next day, at breakfast with Gale, she notices that he has his communicuff back, and she asks, when did you get that back? Turns out he got it back yesterday. And his reasoning for getting it back is that he's going to be out in the field with her, so it'll be a way to get in contact with her. She's wondering why nobody has given her a communicuff then, because that seems like the most direct route. And then out loud says, I guess at least one of us has to be accessible. Yeah, to say the least, as she's saying this, she has just a little bit of annoyance in her voice. She's a little done with Gale right now. And then she makes a comment about how she hopes she still has access to Gale as well. They look at each other, and she is just now realizing how mad she is at Gale. Because he hasn't told her. Her best friend hasn't told her that he saw Peeta looking like that. She feels so betrayed by this. I feel like every time we talk about Gale, Katniss is feeling betrayed. As she should. He knows her well enough to know she's mad. And then he puts all the pieces together. She gets up, puts her tray away. He's calling after her, but she's just ignoring him. So he grabs her arm saying, why didn't you say anything? She turns on him, jerking her arm away and says, why didn't I? Why didn't you, Gale, when I asked you last night about what was going on? He apologizes about this and used the excuse that they didn't tell her because they were afraid it would make her sick. This is when Katniss says, they were right, but not quite as sick as you lying to me for coin. Then Coin is walking towards them and she goes, oh, there she is. You should tell her. He actually looks hurt for a moment, but then anger replaces his emotions, and then he just walks away and leaves. He's really good about entering an argument and then just leaving halfway through. It's super healthy when people do that. Great way of communication. A little later, she finds out they're all going to District 12 to film some more propos, even one with Gale, going over how he got everybody out of 12. Well, the 800 people he did. Not everybody. 90% of them dead. Remember that? Cool. They start filming at her old house, the one in the seam, and they just tell her to do whatever she feels like doing. But what are you supposed to do when you're just sat in front of your old destroyed house? Eventually they go to Gale's old home, and Cressida starts interviewing him. And this is when they start making him reenact the night of the firebombing. They go all the way to the lake that Katniss grew up swimming at. They eventually break for lunch there, and Katniss ends up sitting right next to Pollux because she's mad at Gale and doesn't want to talk to him. Especially not when they're at the place that Gale decided to tell Katniss he loved her. So yeah, she really doesn't want to be anywhere near that guy right now. She points out a Mockingjay to him, and he whistles a few times for it, causing a little tune to go through all the Mockingjays. He then taps her arm and writes "sing" in the dirt. She starts with Rue's 4 notes, but that just brings up memories of the Hungergames, and nobody wants those. So instead, she offers to sing a real song. And this is when she sings The Hanging Tree, a song where a murderer is asking for his love to meet him in a tree where they can both be free. Free and death. I obviously can't play the song here, but if you haven't heard it before somehow, go listen to it at some point. After she's done singing and the Mockingjays are picking up her song, she realizes that Castor has been taping her this whole time. The whole gang is walking back now, and as they're walking back, they walk past a boulder, and Katniss and Gale's attention snaps right to it because that is their meeting spot for hunting. Cressida asks them what they're looking at. They explain it to her. They go over to it, and she is filled with memories of when she was happy and Gale and her were close, and it hurts because her and Gale are now drifting apart, and she doesn't know why they're fighting all the time, but it's because this guy sucks. You also have some bad moments, but it's mainly him. But she does end up picking up a blackberry, trying to bridge the gap, and tosses it in the air, saying, "Happy Hunger Games," in a heavy capital accent. He watches it, and then opens his mouth, catches it, and says, "And may the odds be ever in your favor." They do a little interview at the boulder, and then Katniss asks to go to Peeta's house, the bakery, to film a few things there. She addresses him, saying, 12 is gone. Your family didn't make it, and you're calling for a ceasefire? There's no one left to hear you. After that, they go to the lump of metal on the ground that used to be the whipping post. This is when Gale takes off his shirt to show off the scars on his back. Katniss goes, "I'm done," and goes straight to the victor's village. She can't look at his back. She's there packing up some of her mother's tools from the kitchen, and when she goes out to the dining room, Gale is standing there by the table and says, "Remember, this is where you kissed me." She honestly didn't think he remembered that due to how drugged up he was at that time, and she admits this to him. He says, "I'd have to be dead to forget that, and maybe not even then. Maybe I'll be like that man in the hanging tree, still waiting for his answer." And he has tears in his eyes right now. So Katniss, to keep them from spilling over, decides to kiss him. Katniss, why? He pulls away from the kiss first and says, "I knew you would kiss me." She's wondering how in the world he knew when she didn't even know she was about to do that. He explains that he only gets her attention when he's in pain. Then just picks up the box she had packed and starts to leave, saying, "Don't worry, it'll pass." She spends the next day hiding in a supply closet all day until Prim comes and gets her for dinner. She's heading back to her room after dinner when Bog stops her and tells her she's needed in command. People are crowded into the room, but she has a seat saved next to Finnick and Plutarch. The screen in this room is on, but it's just showing the regular Capitol feed right now. She asks if they're about to use the 12 propos, and they explain that they don't really know, but Beetee has something planned. Finnick is the one that explains to her that Beetee found a way to possibly get into the Capitol feed today. So they're using the live programming that's happening tonight, with Snow giving a speech or something to test it out. Snow appears, but as the camera pans out, she sees Peeta off to the side in front of a map of Panem, and he looks worse. Finnick holds her hand to act as an anchor for her in this moment. And I mean, he probably needs it too because he's just having to imagine what Annie looks like if Peeta looks like that. Peeta, again, is talking about a ceasefire. But then, all of a sudden, Katniss is on screen in front of the bakery. The room is buzzing, and then it cuts back to Peeta, but he's distracted because he's seen it on the monitor. And now, it breaks into a full-on broadcast battle, and Beetee was prepared for this. He has 5-second clips prepared of Katniss saying a couple things here and there. Everybody in the room is cheering, except for Katniss, Finnick, and Haymitch. She looks at Haymitch to find his eyes filled with dread, mirroring her own, because they know with each cheer in this room, Peeta is slipping further and further and further from their grasp. The Capitol seal comes back on, and then after a bit, once the Capitol has gotten a little more control back, it seems, Snow and Peeta are on screen again, and Snow says they will come back to this broadcast once they have full control again, and asks Peeta if he has any parting words for Katniss. His face contorts in effort, saying, "How do you think this will end, Katniss? What will be left? No one is safe. Not in the capital, not in the districts. And you, in 13. He stops now, inhaling sharply, and his eyes have this insane look, and he says, "You, in 13. Dead by morning." No orders for them to end the broadcast. And then Beetee starts flashing a still shot of Katniss over and over and over again. Peeta is trying to say something else, but the camera is knocked down to the ground. They hear boots, and then they hear an impact of a blow, followed by Peeta's cry of pain, and then they see blood drip onto the white floor. The room that they're in goes crazy. Everybody is wondering what he means. Haymitch tells everybody to shut up. Everybody is looking at him, and he goes, "It's not some big mystery. The boy just told us we're about to be attacked." Real fast, side tangent. If you're just a movie watcher, this scene in the movie plays out so differently, because Peeta basically says the same thing, and then the room is calm. And then Haymitch just goes, "He's warning us. It's a warning." Anyways, it makes more sense here, because everybody is still confused, and they're still questioning Haymitch on this if Peeta is actually warning them, because apparently everybody in this room is stupid. Haymitch has to point out that they are beating Peeta bloody right now for what he said. So yeah, I feel like that right there might be enough proof. Quinn agrees to set a level 5 alarm, and they haven't done a drill in a long time anyway, so there's really no harm. Boggs quickly takes Katniss and Finnick down to a low-level bunker. She starts looking around for Prim and her mother, but they're not there yet. The bunker that they're in has bunks built into the rocks, with a kitchen, a bathroom, and a first aid station. It's designed for people to be able to stay in here for a long while. Again, remember, her dad died in a mining accident, and now she's just in like this rock area that's kind of built out a little, but still you can see the rocks, and she's freaking out. Luckily, her anxiety of being underground isn't as bad since having to live underground all the time in District 13, but it's still there. Plutarch eventually comes down, finds her, and is like, "Hey, so just so you know, everybody is going to be watching you and following your lead." So basically, everybody just needs to follow the lead of a 17-year-old who is horribly traumatized and just had to watch her best friend / love get beat up. But yeah, put this extra pressure on her. Great job. I'm gonna ruffle some feathers. But, Plutarch, also not a great guy. Better than the capital people, obviously, but, he's not a stand-up guy. I mean, he even admits this at one point, basically. He's like, "Yeah, I'm not the best guy ever. I'm just doing what I can." And that's not to say he's an awful person, but, like, he's not perfect, and he's been getting so much praise lately, I feel like, and it's kind of driving me insane. I don't think that's how Suzanne intended for him to be viewed. Remember, he is still putting a 17-year-old in the middle of a war to get content. Katniss gets to her sleeping bunk. She follows the instructions that are laid out on her bed, and lo and behold, people are following her lead. Once she starts, everybody else starts to do it as well. These people are so smart. Her mother eventually shows up, but not Prim. They're both wondering where Prim could have gone because she works in the hospital with her mother, and then they come to the realization that Prim went back to get the cat. Katniss sees the guards starting to close the metal door, and she runs over to them being like, "Stop!" And she jams her arm through it so they can't close it. These guards don't even fully recognize Katniss. They don't know why this random girl just shoved her arm through the door and is now shouting, "Prim!" These poor guards are so confused. Then she hears the footsteps and Prim calling out, "We're coming!" And then Gale shouts, "Hold the door!" Now, I can say as many bad things as I like about Gale, but Gale does care about Prim like she is his own little sister. I'm not trying to make Gale like the main villain of the story or anything, but he's just so easy to hate sometimes. But I do have to remind myself that he does have good qualities, and this is one of them. He thought to look for Prim saving her cat before Katniss did, if that tells you anything about how much he cares about her. The guards slide the door open, but Katniss still doesn't move from in between the doors until Prim and Gale are safely inside, because she doesn't trust these people not to lock them out. Once they're all safe, she grabs Prim's shoulder and shakes her, going, "What were you thinking?" And then to Buttercup goes, "I should have drowned you when I had the chance." Katniss! But Prim simply couldn't fathom leaving her cat behind. And I can't lie, I would be the person to risk my life for one of my animals, okay? Is it the smartest thing to do? Probably not, but like, that's my baby. I'm going back for them. Gale not only got Prim, but also got her game bag and filled it with most of their mementos that were in their room of 13. He drops it off on her bed and then lets her know where he will be. Coin now comes over the speaker saying this wasn't a drill. We evacuated the top levels because of Peeta's warning tonight. Then the first bomb hits. They can feel it, but they're all safe because of Peeta. Their mom pulls them both close, doing their best to comfort them. It's a really sweet scene between this family unit. It's so precious. Coin's voice, once again, after a few bombs have hit, comes over the speaker and says, "Peeta was correct. I think they all knew that by now. Thank you very much, Coin." She continues on saying they now owe him a great debt of gratitude. The bombs the Capitol is using aren't nuclear, so they won't have to deal with that problem of radiation and all that fun stuff, but they do expect more bombs to hit. Their mother is eventually called over to the first aid station, leaving Prim and Katniss alone for the first time in a long time. They take this time to catch up, joke, and just be sisters for a little bit. During this, we learn that Prim is probably going to start training here soon to become a doctor at some point in the future. Katniss also catches Prim up on the whole peeta situation. Prim assures Katniss, though, that they won't kill Peeta because if they do, they'll have no way to hurt Katniss. She asks, "What do you think they'll do to him then?" And she says, "Whatever it takes to break you." As they go through the night with more missiles going off and no one really resting, their space becomes quite popular because of Buttercup and a flashlight. And a little game they called Crazy Cat, which is basically just Buttercup chasing the flashlight across the room. Katniss sees this game as a metaphor for the situation that her and Peeta are in. Peeta being the flashlight and her being the cat. And Prim, who is holding the flashlight and moving it, being the Capitol. Buttercup is never able to catch this light. And when Buttercup tries to catch this light and can't, he grows frustrated. And when the light turns off, he's distraught and confused. But then he recovers and moves on to other things. And this is what truly starts to break Katniss, because she knows this is how Snow is using Peeta against her. If he were to just kill Peeta, she could be distraught and confused, but she would eventually move on. But right now she can't, because there's still a chance she could get Peeta. Meaning Peeta is just getting hurt because of her. Once basically everybody is asleep, she sneaks over to Finnick's area and finds him knotting his rope like normal. She tells him all about how they're using Peeta against her, but he already knows because that's how they're using Annie against him. Finnick starts to blame himself that she's figured this out because he said that they were using Peeta against her. He goes on saying he didn't really understand the relationship when he first met them. He thought the whole romance was fake until Peeta hit the force field. And that's when Finnick knew he misjudged her. And he says, even if you didn't know how you felt about him yourself. Remember that little head shake he gave during that scene as if he was clearing his mind? It's because all of that was going through his head. They sit in silence for a while as she just watches him tie knots. And then she asks, "How do you bear it?" He's shocked by this question and says, "I don't. I drag myself out of nightmares each morning to find myself living in one." Then Finnick gives her his rope and says they'll get her her own soon, but for right now, she can use his. After 24 hours of quiet and no more bombs or missiles being dropped, whatever you want to call them, they are free to leave the bunker. Boggs comes down real fast, grabbing her, Finnick, and Gale, and brings them straight up to special defense, with all the normal people at the table. Quinn gets straight to the point, saying they all need to suit up to go above ground to get some footage, showing that 13 is fine and the Mockingjay is alive. Finnick, though, over here is more focused on the coffee that some of these people have. They don't get coffee normally here, and he goes, "Can we have some?" Can we blame him for making this a priority right now? Not really. This boy has been through hell. They get their coffee, and then he asks her if she wants a sugar cube. Do you get it? Do you get it? Because the first time they met, he was like, "Do you want a sugar cube?" As she's on her way to suit up, she catches Gale watching her and Finnick, and he looks upset. Let me go on a little rant real fast. This is for all of y'all, saying that Finnick and Katniss could have been something. No! No, they couldn't have. That was never an intention by Suzanne. They were always in this sibling dynamic. Yes, he was flirty with her when they first met, but he was testing her. He was testing the relationship she had with Peeta to see if she was somebody worth protecting in these games. To see if she was the person that could possibly lead this rebellion. For those of y'all who think this, I just need to ask, you really want to have the same opinion that Gale has about a situation? Gale is the only one to ever accuse them of having any type of a relationship other than friendly. I'll come back to this rant in just a little bit after we learn a few more key details about Finnick's life, okay? Luckily for us, Katniss is tired of trying to make Gale happy all the time and just leaves. They all get outside, they're trying to find a good place to film, and Katniss and Haymitch are talking to Boggs, trying to figure out how much Peeta helped them last night. Peeta gave them an extra 10 minutes to get everybody to the bunkers before they caught anything on their radars. Peeta saved a lot of lives last night. Everybody is alive because of him. Prim and Gale are alive because of Peeta. Remember, they got in there at the last moment, right before those bombs started coming down. As they were discussing all of this, Cressida has decided she wants to film in front of the old Justice Building as a little jab to the Capitol because that's the clip they always use when they show District 13. But as they approach the Justice Building, they all slow down because the ground is covered in pink and red roses. Katniss yells, "Don't touch them, they're for me!" A crew comes out in special suits and inspects them all and confirms that they're harmless. Physically, yeah, harmless. Mentally very harmful to Katniss. She is in a full-on anxiety attack at this moment. Plus, she already had the coffee in her system, so it's just making it even worse with the caffeine she's not used to. She is physically shaking now. She's still trying to do her job on getting this message back to Snow, but after Cressida has given her some simple directions, Katniss just stares at the camera for a while and then goes, "I'm sorry, I've got nothing." Cressida walks over, checks on her, and then tries a Q&A style of thing. But in the middle of answering the first question, her voice breaks. She was just trying to get out, "District 13 is alive and well, and so am I." And this is when she starts crying. She can't be the Mockingjay, knowing that everything she does goes back and affects Peeta. Finnick steps up and explains to everybody what is going on and why she is like this right now. Several people come over to her to hug her, offer her comfort, but Haymitch is the only person she wants right now, because he loves Peeta too. And he says, "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm unwell. Okay." She just cries into him saying, "I can't do this anymore." He goes, "I know." He is just so gentle with her in this moment. This is one of my favorite moments between these two. She starts trying to voice how he looked in the footage and how he was acting, but she doesn't know how. She manages to get out, "It's my fault," before she's sedated. She wakes up and Haymitch is sitting on the end of her bed. She starts to remember everything about Peeta and starts trembling again. He gets up, squeezes her shoulder, and says, "It's okay. We're going to get them out." See, Plutarch is sending in a rescue team of volunteers only. Boggs is the one who is leading it. They hadn't done this mission till now because this mission is very costly. They will be blowing people's covers in the Capitol, basically destroying any intel they have from the inside, and probably costing lives. But they need Katniss as the Mockingjay, and they know she can't do that job until they have Peeta or Peeta is dead. They're of course also going to grab the other victors that have been captured. She's asking who volunteered, and Haymitch is like, 7 altogether." She knows something is wrong, so she asks again, who volunteered? He simply says, "You know who stepped up first. Gale." I can't. This scene. Her first thought is, I might lose them both. The two people she cares about so much in her life that aren't her family, but Jennifer Lawrence does this scene so well. When she breaks down thinking she's lost them both, I cannot with that scene at all. She tells Haymitch she needs to do something, so Haymitch leaves her to go talk to Plutarch. She goes over, wakes up Finnick, explains everything to him as well. She's still really worried about this mission, but he just says, "Don't you see? By the end of the day, they'll either be dead or with us. It's better than we could have ever hoped." She had not thought about it that way, but it's oddly calming. Haymitch comes back, informing them that they still need post-bombing footage, and they could use that as a distraction, but they will need something riveting. They get back up to the same spot. Her and Cressida shoot a short little Q&A, but this time she doesn't burst into tears. She talks a lot about Peeta, and acts like it's very freeing for her to know that the Capitol has them, and encourages all the districts to declare their freedom from the Capitol. Then, once she's done, and Finnick takes her place, Haymitch says, "Are you sure? You don't have to do this." But Finnick knows this will help Annie, so there's nothing anybody could say that would stop him from doing it. Katniss doesn't know what to expect out of Finnick right now, but she definitely didn't expect for him to say, "President Snow used to sell me. My body, that is." See, if the Capitol found a tribute desirable, like they did Finnick, they would give them as an award, or send them to people with exorbitant amount of monies willing to pay for their time. And if they refused, Snow would kill somebody they loved. Katniss is just hit with a wave of guilt over thinking that Finnick was some type of player in the Capitol, because everybody knew he was going off of Capitol citizens, and a lot of the victors did know what was happening, but Katniss didn't. She thought he was doing this all for his own gain, when in reality he was forced to do this to keep the ones he loved safe. Finnick goes on saying that he was the most popular, and everybody he loved was defenseless, so he had no choice. The people that bought him would give him gifts and money to make themselves feel better. But Finnick found a much more valuable form of payment: secrets. And then he addresses Snow, saying, "And so many of them are about you." He starts with other secrets about other high-power citizens, but then eventually gets to the ones about Snow. He reveals how and who Snow has poisoned. See, this is how he rose to power. He just simply poisoned anyone who threatened him. And the reason that Snow smells like blood is because to hide the fact that he's been poisoning people, he would sometimes have to drink the poison himself. The Capitol crew that is filming is so enthralled with what he's saying, he's the one that has to say cut once he is done. Now let's circle back to a very important topic, and why I will never think it's a cutesy little thing to ship Finnick and Katniss, because Finnick, from a young age, was pried upon by adults. Now, why would he do that to a 17-year-old? No, I don't care what mental state you think he's in. He's also completely in love with Annie, completely devoted to her. There has never and will never be anything between these two. It truly makes me so mad because it's such a misunderstanding of both of their characters. Especially his. Plutarch after this takes Finnick off to have a little chat. Katniss goes over to Haymitch now, asking if what happened to Finnick is what happened to Haymitch. It wasn't. His mother, his brother, and his girl were all killed because of the stunt he pulled in the games. He was the example that Snow would hold up to the young victors like Joanna and Finnick, showing them exactly what would happen if they stepped out of line. Beetee is actually able to keep the footage up of Finnick during the time that their team is in the capital. Finnick and Katniss try to be in command so they can be the first to know any news about this mission, but they are barred out of there because apparently they're talking about war stuff. They end up waiting in special forces, tying knots together, and Katniss asks if he left Annie right away. And he says, no, she crept up on me. Then, around midnight, Haymitch comes through the door saying they're back, and that they're both wanted in the hospital. She's about to ask him something, but Haymitch just stops her, saying, that is all I know. She has to grab Finnick's hand because it's like he's forgotten how to walk for them to get there. It's pure chaos when they enter the hospital room. The first one they see is Joanna, who is covered in bruises and has scars that are oozing out stuff, my favorite word again, and her hair has been completely buzzed off. She also sees that Gale is all right, just a little wounded. Then she hears a girl shout, Finnick! And of course, it's Annie. She starts running towards them in nothing but a hospital gown, shouting, Finnick! And then when they are back in each other's arms, it is like no one else is left in the world besides these two. They collide, falling into a wall where they stay, just clinging to each other. They got everyone out except for Enobaria, who, being from 2, was probably actually not even in prison and was just hanging out in the capital. Her and Haymitch leave Finnick and go off to find Peeta. She is wondering what she's going to say to him, but she knows that no matter what she says, he's going to be ecstatic to see her and will probably end up kissing her, and she's just hoping it feels like the last time they kissed on the beach. Peeta is awake, looking at Doctors very confused, but then he sees Katniss and looks at her in disbelief. And something more intense, but she thinks maybe it's desire. He sweeps the Doctor aside and leaps to his feet and starts moving towards her. She starts running towards him. She's extending her arms to embrace him, and his hands are reaching out as well, in a way that looks like he's about to caress her face when they meet. She's about to say his name when his hands close around her throat. So yeah, not the reunion she thought she was getting. Cut to Katniss waking up in a hospital bed with a very sore throat, bruised from Peeta trying to kill her. Yeah, the same Peeta who would have given up his life for Katniss just tried to murder her at their first reunion. Boggs was the one that had to knock out Peeta to get him off of Katniss. See, Peeta has been what they called hijacked. Basically, the Capitol used Trackerjacker venom, the bees from the first movie that would cause hallucinations and stuff like that, to alter his memories, specifically the ones he had of Katniss, to make her look evil and life-threatening. As Beetee is explaining all of this, Prim is demanding they fix this. Beetee assures her that they will be trying to, but he doesn't know to what degree they will be able to succeed in doing that. Plutarch is like, yeah, he'll make a full recovery. Prim's not buying it, and asks Haymitch what he thinks. Haymitch is much more realistic and says, I think he'll get somewhat better, but I don't think he'll ever be the same. Katniss is just in and out of a daze for the next few days, and on the third night, even though Gale isn't supposed to be out of his bed, he comes over to Katniss's room. He just comes into her room, touches her bruise, kisses her on her forehead between her eyes, and then vanishes. What? I can just imagine Gale sitting there in his room working this up. He's like, yeah, this will really win her back right here. I'm gonna go kiss her forehead. What are you doing, my guy? What are you doing? Prim is eventually able to take Katniss back to their new room because, the last one got destroyed by Capitol bombs, so I guess that's 1-2 Katniss's houses against Capitol bombs. What a fun stat. Basically, on their way, Prim is just telling Katniss to be patient with Peeta, and the old him may still be in there. It's just gonna take a bit to find him. After Prim leaves Katniss, Katniss ends up just wandering around District 13 and ends up at Special Defenses, where she finds Gale and Beetee looking at a drawing surrounded by a bunch of other drawings. She recognizes it as a snare that Gale used to call a twitch-up snare. She makes herself known, and then Beetee starts to fill her in about how him and Gale have been working together to make Gale's traps into traps that would work on humans instead of animals, using mostly bombs. A lot of bombs. They talk about one where a bomb would explode and then allow time for other people to come in and help those that were injured in that bomb, and then another round of bombs would go off. Katniss points out that this seems to be crossing the line. Gale then stoops so low and brings Peeta into this as an excuse to hurt others. She leaves straight away after this, and before she can even get out of Special Defenses, Haymitch is there, saying that they need her in the hospital, because they are about to try something new with Peeta. They're going to send somebody that he would have known from his childhood that's not really connected with Katniss in any way. And guess who they get? Deli Cartwright. The one that Peeta was like, oh yeah, she looks like the Avox, and that's why you think you know her. Yeah, she doesn't look anything like this Avox, but anyways, they got Deli. She's a very, very sweet girl. Like, so sweet hurts your teeth, you know? That kind of sweet. They watch her through the one-way glass where Peeta is strapped down to a bed and Deli is going into the room. She's reminding Peeta who she is. Then she does her best to explain why they are here in District 13. Peeta clings on to the fact that there has been a fire and that it's all Katniss' fault. Deli is doing her best to defend Katniss to Peeta, but Peeta goes on saying, don't trust her. She killed my family. She's a mutt. A mutt. Katniss just leaves and tells Haymitch if they want her to be the Mockingjay, they have to get her away from District 13 and Peeta. Haymitch is like, all right, where do you want to go? She goes to the capital. He's like, okay, that's not possible. Fighting is over basically everywhere but 2. So you can go to 2. And she's like, all right, I'll go to 2. Now, cut to Katniss in District 2. District 2 is much larger than District 12. There are villages spread out all throughout the mountains here. But at the center of all of this is a basically impenetrable mountain called the Nut that houses the heart of the capital's military. Now, due to the fact that 2 is basically the capital's favorite child, a lot of the people in the Nut, or who are peacekeepers, don't really realize they're slaves to the capital. But the stonecutters of this district, now they recognize that. Katniss spends her days doing whatever she can, visiting the wounded, taping propos, and goes to meetings on the status of the war, even though they won't let her fight. Honestly, she spends a lot of time hunting, but that also leaves her a lot of time to think about how Snow has twisted Peeta's brain beyond recognition. And the thing is, if they didn't break Peeta out, they probably would have just dropped him off as a present for Katniss at some point, because he was designed to kill her. She misses the Peeta she knew a lot, but is keeping herself going by thinking about killing Snow. Plutarch over here is oh so helpful, giving her updates on Peeta's condition, being like, oh, he doesn't think you're a mutt anymore. That's what every girl wants to hear. Then Haymitch gets on the line and will admit that Peeta is no better. Prim is actually the one that comes up with the idea to reverse hijack Peeta by giving him calming meds when they show him a memory or video of Katniss. This ends up just leaving him really confused, but you know, maybe that's better than extreme terror. She's also updated that Beetee is bringing a team to 2, and Gale is on this team. Gale had offered to come with Katniss originally, but she was like, I don't want to take you away from Beetee right now and all the work you guys are doing together. But in reality, it was just going to be much more difficult for her to mourn Peeta while Gale was around, being his mopey, I love you so much and why don't you love me self. When Gale gets there, he finds her plucking a goose and just sits down right next to her. They're catching up, and then after a bit of silence, he says, I saw Peeta yesterday through the glass. She's like, oh yeah, what'd you think? He says, something selfish. She goes, you don't have to be jealous of him anymore. He says, no, I thought just the opposite. I thought, I'll never compete with that, no matter how much pain I'm in. I don't stand a chance if he never gets better. Because Katniss over here won't be able to let him go, and even though that's an insane thing to say, he is kind of right. But somehow, even after this awkward conversation and after they drop off the goose to whoever they needed to drop it off with, they go back into the woods to find some kindling, and they end up wrapped up in each other's arms. She lets herself get lost in this, until Gale pulls away. She moves in to kiss him again, and he stops her. She's confused, and then he says, now kiss me again. After she's recentered, he leans in to kiss her again, and then pulls away again, and looks at her asking, what's going on in your head? She whispers, I don't know. And then Gale says to his clearly mentally traumatized friend, then it's like kissing somebody who's drunk. It doesn't count. Excuse me? I'm sorry, there's no way to defend this. I don't care that he really, really, really likes her. He is supposed to be her best friend, and while everything else in her life is falling apart, he decides to pull this crap again, removing the one bit of safety she had felt in a long time. She didn't need Gale to kiss her. She just needed a friend. Gale at this point does not care about just being her friend. He wants Katniss as a wife or nothing, and it's honestly disgusting with everything else going on in the world that this is a priority to him. It drives me insane. It drives me insane. Oh my gosh. That boy. They start arguing now, because honestly, what else was she supposed to do? She jumps right to, you have kissed so many girls, when did I become so special? When they took me to the capital? Gale explains it was 6 months before then, when Darius was jokingly flirting with her at one point at one of the stalls, and he realized he did kind of care that Darius was doing that. See, he's like a little kid who has a toy he's not playing with, but then another kid comes and starts playing with his toy, and he's like, wait a second, that's my toy. Not trying to compare Katniss to a toy. I'm just once again trying to point out that Gale sucks. She knows the conversation that Gale is talking about, and again points out that Darius was only joking. Gale says, yeah, he probably was, but let's admit it, you would be the last one to figure it out if he wasn't. Then he uses Peeta, himself, and Finnick as an example. Again, y'all really gonna trust this man? This man who is so jealous of everybody on his opinion on Katniss and Finnick's relationship? No! Katniss immediately calls him out on the Finnick one and is like, you don't even know him. Gale says, I know he was desperate and desperate people do crazy things. Katniss feels like that last bit was directed more at Katniss than anyone else. And also, because you would do something stupid, Gale, doesn't mean that Finnick O'Dare would, okay? Let's get that straight right now. Cut to the next day. Lime, the commander of 2, who is actually a victor of the Hunger Games as well, is taking them through a virtual tour of the Nut with some sort of hollow thing they have. Beetie's team, nicknamed the Brain, is throwing out ideas on how to crack the nut. But Lime is just getting more and more frustrated with every idea because they have already tried these ideas. And they failed. So she threatens to have the next person who suggests they block the entrance lead the mission themselves. Gale eventually goes, do we need to take it or can we just disable it? Beatty's like, disabling it would work. Gale goes, okay, then we have 2 choices. Since we can't fight our way in, we can either trap them in there or flush them out. Gale's idea is to strategically place bombs to cause an avalanche, effectively trapping everybody in there to die. Boggs is the first one out loud to say, that would kill everyone in there. Because the ventilation systems that pump fresh air from outside the mountain in would be blocked by this avalanche. And they would all suffocate. Beetee says they could escape through the train tunnel. Gale counters this, saying, not if we blow it up. Katniss now realizes that Gale didn't just accidentally plan to kill everybody in the mountain. He is actively planning this, and this is what he wants to do. He doesn't want anybody to come out of that mountain. This is one of his death traps that normally he would use on animals, so it got them food, but now it's just murder. I mean, it's war, so I don't think it's technically murder, but looking a little bit like a game maker over here. Everybody's pointing out how this is just kind of wrong, and Gale just doesn't care because he wants revenge. That's all he's focused on. Yes, these are peacekeepers from 2. Yes, they are helping the capital, but these are also still district citizens that are getting put into the arena year after year after year. They're being affected like this. Just because they don't see that right now doesn't mean they're not being affected in some way. Not saying they're entirely innocent, but these people aren't even capital people. Gale is like one of those people who gets online and is like, yeah, eat the rich, but they're talking about just like upper class families. Not the billionaires, no, just the upper class families with nice houses. That's who they're talking about. And that's not what people mean when they say eat the rich. Gale, once again, instead of turning on the capital and getting revenge on the actual capital, is just wanting to get revenge on the citizens that kind of look like the capital to him. They eventually call coin and she decides to go with Gale's plan, except they will leave the tunnel open as a way for them to evacuate the mountain. But they will be waiting down there heavily armed, ready to greet them. Gale's kind of upset they're not just gonna trap everybody and let them die in the mountain by suffocation, but you know, like I have no words to really describe how I feel about him in this moment. Because yeah, part of you gets it, but also he's just wrong. He's just wrong. Later that day, the bombs go off, triggering the avalanche, and this sends Katniss back into a memory of the day her father died. Her mother is already waiting at the mines when Katniss and Prim found her there after they were alerted of this at school. They watched person after person after person come out. But then, at dawn, the crew leader comes out, and that is the last person. And they know they will never see their father again. Katniss goes inside and sits down like she was instructed to do, and Boggs eventually comes over and sits down next to her, reassuring her that some people will make it out of this. But he looks just as torn up about this as she does. He doesn't agree with this decision. They hear gunfire in the square where peacekeepers are trying to fight their way to the Nut to get to the other people who are now trapped inside. This is when Haymitch comes on over the headset to give her an update about Peeta. When they played a clip of her singing The Hanging Tree, he said he recognized that song. They had never been able to get that clip to the Capitol, so they were never able to use it against him and twist that memory he had of Katniss. Katniss is like, yeah, but I never sung that in front of him. Haymitch says, no, but your father did when he went to go trade at the bakery. She watches Gale run by at this time and she just wishes Peeta was here because he would be able to articulate why it's wrong to exchange gunfire when there are people, any people, trapped in a mountain. Then later, well after midnight, Cressida comes to mic up Katniss. Haymitch is letting her know that he's sorry, but she needs to give a speech now. He'll feed it to her line by line. There's also no sign of life from the mountain. So they are just going to have her go in front of the Justice Building and inform everybody there that District 2 has been defeated. So then, hopefully, they can get the rest of the forces to surrender. She, of course, doesn't want to do this. She didn't want to trap all those people in the mountain. She was hoping people would get out of there alive, but she gets up there to give her speech when 2 trains come barreling out of the mountain. People are tumbling out of these train cars in a cloud of smoke, and it's the people from the Nut. They fall to the ground to avoid bullets, and then they also shoot out the lights there, plunging them into darkness and bringing lots of chaos. Then Katniss sees a young man stagger out of the crowd, and then he falls over and she sees the burn marks on his back. And Katniss sees him as just another burn victim from a mining accident. She remembers the pain of getting burned. She has seen burn victims come to her mother time after time after time. So she goes running to this man, yelling for the rebels to stop. As she nears him, he drags himself onto one knee and aims a gun at her forehead. Haymitch, through the earpiece, tells her to freeze. So smart, Haymitch. I don't think she would have done that without you telling her. The man says, "Give me one reason I shouldn't shoot you." All she can say is, "I can't." She's ready for him to pull the trigger, end her at this point, but he's just sitting there perplexed. As they both just sit there looking at each other, her thoughts become more clear. And she says, "I can't. That's the problem, isn't it? We blew up your mind. You burned our district to the ground. We have every right to hate each other, so do it and make the capital happy. I'm done killing their slaves for them." And then she pushes her bow away from her completely. The man in front of her mutters, "I am not their slave." She goes, "I am. That's why I killed Cato. And he killed Thresh, and he killed Clove. And she tried to kill me. It just goes round and round and round. And who wins? Not us, not the districts. It's always the capital. I'm tired of being a piece in their games." Haymitch tells her to keep talking and tell him about how she felt watching the mountain avalanche happen. "I thought they've done it again. Got me to kill the people in the district. But we have no fight except for the one the capital gave us. Why are you fighting with the rebels? With Lime, with your neighbor?" And this man says, "I don't know." Katniss now turns to the machine guns manned by rebels, saying, "And you, I come from a mining town. Since when do miners condemn other miners to this death? And then stand by and kill those who manage to make it out?" Haymitch just whispers, "Who is the enemy? Keep going." She points at the people saying, "These people are not your enemy. The rebels are not your enemy. We all have one enemy, and that is the capital. This is our chance to put an end to their power, but we need every person to do it." Then she reaches out her hand to the man, asking him to join them. She looks up at the screen of the Justice Building, hoping to see how the people are reacting, but she only sees herself getting shot. Then she's hearing Peeta whisper, "Always," and she's trying to find him, but then she wakes up in a District 13 hospital bed. She heard "always" because when Peeta carried her to bed the night that she was injured from going into the woods, she had said, "Stay with me." And she remembered hearing him whisper something but didn't know quite what he said until now. He had said, "always." Apparently her brain had held on to this little word, but hadn't quite brought it to the surface until right now. We do learn it wasn't the man right in front of her that shot her, it was somebody further back. She tries to sit up, but she can't, and then Joanna walks in. She goes, "I'm alive?" Joanna goes, "Duh," and then detaches the tube that is hooked up to the IV in her and puts it into her own IV port. See, they were giving Katniss morphling to numb the pain, but they had just cut off Joanna, and now she's just stealing Katniss's morphling. She figured Katniss wouldn't really mind, and Katniss really can't mind because Joanna has just been tortured for months. She explains to Katniss that the bullet never even touched her thanks to Cinna's armor. And her ribs aren't even broken, they're just bruised. And even if she did need a new rib, they would find one since it's everybody's job to keep her alive. Somebody is still a little salty. And fair enough, honestly. Katniss just asks her straight out, "Why do you hate me?" She admits that jealousy is definitely involved, and Katniss is just kind of a hard pill to swallow, with the tacky romance act and the defender of the helpless. And it's just made worse because it's not an act, it's just who Katniss is. Gale is standing at the door as Joanna leaves, and he's all nice to Katniss and says, "You gotta stop running into trouble." She points out that somebody blew up a mountain. So, whoops. They start arguing back and forth whether it was the right thing to do. Gale's main point is they did it to prevent further attacks, which is fair. But Katniss points out you could do just about anything with that logic, like throwing a bunch of kids into the arena every year. They agree to disagree, and he fills her in that they officially have control of 2 now, meaning they have control of all the districts, completely cutting off the capital's supplies. Later that day, they do have to send a film crew in to film Katniss because everybody thinks she's dead because they saw her get shot, but she's fine. So they just take a little video. She's like, "Hey guys, I'm alive. I made it. Story time." Story time, the story of when I got shot, but I have really cool armor, so I'm perfectly fine. Right now is kind of a chill period for the rebels in the war. With all the districts aligned, they're just taking time to regroup until they go to the capital to have the final push of this rebellion and try to take over. And the longer they wait, since the capital makes nothing there, the weaker the capital gets. See, the capital is named after the mantra of, I'm gonna butcher this so bad, I'm so sorry, panem et circenses, which is a saying from ancient Rome of bread and circus. Basically, they gave up all of their responsibilities for full bellies and entertainment, but they lost all their power. Right now, they have all the food, and Plutarch has entertainment planned, and he lets Katniss know it's in the form of a wedding, and Katniss is like, oh my word, are they going to make me marry hijacked peeta right now? That is so messed up, guys. But don't worry, Plutarch actually just means Finnick and Annie, which it makes a lot more sense because peeta's still not doing great. No. Katniss is relieved because she knows for once she won't even have to pretend to be happy for them. She just will be happy. The next few days go by of everybody planning the wedding. The capital citizens that are in District 13 wants the extravagant wedding, and District 13 wants to do the bare minimum. Katniss even takes Annie to her house in District 12 so she can pick out one of the dresses from her closet to wear for the wedding. Annie to wear as, like, the pretty bride dress. Everybody else is going to be in their normal suits. Her prep team even comes along with them, and they begin to cry as soon as they see these dresses. Because simply, it's been so long since they've seen something pretty, and also, they're Cinna's dresses, and they loved Cinna. The wedding all around is a hit though, but it's not about the decorations or the dress. It's about the joy on the face of two people that get to celebrate a day they never thought would happen. Because Snow wasn't gonna let them get married. Can you imagine how much money Finnick was making him? It's incredibly messed up, but these two were never going to get this under the capital's reign. But now, they do. It's so sweet. For the reception, they even have one of the fiddlers from 12 strike up a tune, and everybody from 12 instantly starts dancing. District 12 may have been the poorest district, but they know how to dance and have a good time. Greasy Say pulls Gale into the middle of the floor, and then people just start pouring in around them, forming two long lines. Katniss is just standing off to the side when Joanna comes up to her saying, "Are you really going to miss the chance to dance and look happy in front of Snow?" Because what would say victory louder than a happy Mockingjay dancing around? She goes and finds her sister. They dance together. The people from 12 are teaching everybody else how to dance as well. The room is truly joyful right now. And eventually a wedding cake is rolled out. Katniss pushes her way to the front to see this cake because she knows by the detail on the cake that Peeta made this. She now realizes that Haymitch must have been keeping things from her because this is a very big step from where Peeta was just a little bit ago. Haymitch comes over at this time because remember, these two have the same brain, and he goes, "We need to talk." He's explaining to her that he doesn't fully understand what's going on with Peeta, but he is almost rational at times. But then, for some random reason, he'll be set off again. He even got to talk with him, and even though he was angry, it was for all the right reasons, like hiding the plan from him. Peeta even said he would like to see Katniss. She's so conflicted on what to do, but no, she can't refuse this. So a little later, she is now in the room with Peeta, with all the doctors on the other side of the one-way glass. One-way mirror. Yeah. Peeta in the room has 3 restraints on each arm and a tube hooked up to him to inject serum to knock him out if needed. They still don't really trust this guy, which is fair enough. He did try to kill their Mockingjay last time they were in a room together. He just observes her for a little while, but it's definitely not with the same love and care as he used to. It's more of a, I'm trying to figure out if you're really a mutt or not look, which shockingly isn't a look that Katniss wanted to receive today. I know. So strange. They both say, "Hello," and then she's like, "Haymitch said you wanted to talk with me?" He corrects her saying, "I wanted to look at you for starters," and then just keeps observing her and then eventually says, "You're not very big, are you? Or particularly pretty." Yeah, ouch, my feelings would also be hurt. Katniss realizes that he has been through some awful stuff, but Katniss is Katniss, and for the next little bit with Peeta, she is not really a great person overall, so she snaps back, saying, "Well, you've looked better yourself." Katniss, he was tortured for months! She has the earpiece in, and Haymitch is advising her to back off. Peeta is laughing, I believe kind of manically at this point, and he's saying, "And not even remotely nice to be saying that to me after what I've been through." She's like, "Yeah, well, you're the one that's known for being nice." Hey, Katniss, insulting someone who was tortured is just even a good step beyond what you're normally like. Okay, girl? Listen to Haymitch, let's back off a bit. Just back off, please. Katniss mentally knows that she is doing everything wrong, and she knows that Peeta was just hijacked, and she doesn't know why she's so defensive right now. She makes an excuse to leave, but he stops her by saying, "I remember the bread." She asks if he's seen the tape of her talking about it. He's confused because if there is a tape, why wouldn't the Capitol have used that against him? But she made that tape the day he was rescued, so they never got the chance. So she asks him about what he actually remembers. He remembers the rain, her digging in the bin, him burning the bread, his mother hitting him taking the bread outside to give to the pigs, and then giving it to her. She's like, "That's right. I wanted to thank you, but I didn't know how." He also remembers that they quickly met eyes the next day, and then she bent down to pick up a dandelion. And then, okay, and then he says, "I must have loved you a lot." Her voice catches as she said, "You did." And then he's like, "Did you love me?" She says, Everybody says that's why Snow tortured you. He brings up that dropping a tracker jacker nest on him didn't look very friendly. She counters, yeah, well, you had me treed. If you don't remember, this is back in the first Hunger Games when he was with the careers and they were all under the tree and then she sawed off the tracker jacker nest to fall on them. That's what they're referring to right now. Then he brings up the kissing and is like, it didn't look very genuine on your part, and asks if she liked kissing him. She admits, sometimes she did. And then is like, hey, do you know that people are watching this whole conversation right now? Because now I'm embarrassed. He's like, yeah. And then he asks about Gale. He's like, actually, how can I make this more awkward right now? She's getting more and more angry now and decides she doesn't care about his recovery and just shoots back, yeah, he's a pretty good kisser too. Katniss, oh my word. What is wrong with you? Peeta is now just sitting there like, so it was okay with both of us that you were kissing both of us? She says, it wasn't okay with either of you, but I wasn't asking permission. Katniss, oh my gosh. Katniss. This is impossible to defend, and we're not meant to be on her side here, but I am blown away every time I read this scene or watch the scene. It's absolutely insane. Here's your reminder. Katniss is not a perfect person. Peeta gives a very cold laugh and says, you're a real piece of work, aren't you? Then she just goes out the door, and Haymitch doesn't even try to stop her as she runs to one of her old hiding places, where eventually, just sitting there by herself, she gets to the bottom of why she's so upset. It's because Peeta used to think she was wonderful, but now he sees her as she really is. Violent, distrustful, manipulative, deadly, and she hates him for seeing her this way. Alright, cut to a little bit later. Haymitch has just told Katniss that she is not going to the Capitol, and Katniss goes running to command going, why am I not going to the Capitol? I'm the freaking Mockingjay. I'm going. Coin barely even looks up from what she was doing and says, your goal was to unify the districts. And that's been done. If all goes well, we'll fly you in for the surrender. But she doesn't want to miss the fighting and points out that she is their best shot. And then it's like, Gale's going. Coin's like, yeah, Gale showed up to training every day. Yeah, Katniss hasn't done any training unless you count shooting some arrows with Beetee. That's not military training. After a lot of talking, she understands how she looks to them. A small, 17-year-old girl who is out of breath from running here due to a bruised rib. But she is still fighting to go because Snow destroyed her entire district. Coin thinks about it and then tells her she has 3 weeks to train. And if after this training, the assessment board deems her fit, Coin will possibly let her go. Katniss is like, okay, I can work with this. And then back in the hospital wing, she finds Joanna fuming about this exact same thing. So they agree they'll train together. Joanna does have a backup plan of just killing a crew and stealing a plane if training doesn't work for them. So, you know, they've got that plan as well. Now, this might be a joke, but you have to remember this is coming from Joanna. So, I don't really trust that it's a joke. She scares me. I love her, but she scares me. The next morning, they go out to train, and they quickly realize they are not in good shape. They are thrown in with the 14 and 15-year-olds who are all in better condition than them. Katniss had to drop out after a little bit of running because of her rib, and when she tells this to the trainer, she's like, well, I can get them to give you a treatment to speed the healing up, but it's gonna suck. Katniss is like, please do. And guess what? It sucks. And Katniss is like, maybe I didn't actually want this, but here I am. She has them stop giving her morphling completely, and Joanna is now having withdrawals. It's going great for these two. As they go out one morning, it is raining, and Joanna looks like she is about to turn right back around and go back inside. But Katniss is like, it's just rain, so they go out. They get to shooting practice, and after a little bit of adjustment to a gun instead of a bow, Katniss is wonderful at it, of course. They're walking back to the hospital after training one day. Joanna says, we've got to stop living here. Everybody views us as patients. To get them discharged from the hospital, Katniss says she will room with Joanna because they don't want Joanna being in a room by herself. Their relationship, their friendship is something the movies messed up so bad. This whole training segment is ditched from the movies. Katniss just sneaks onto a train. Anyways, back to training montage. By that night, they have a compartment across from her mother and Prim, who have agreed to keep an eye on these two. Joanna accidentally opens the drawer that holds Katniss's stuff and says, oh, sorry. She just goes, it's fine, you can look through it if you want, because Joanna has nothing of her own here. She sees the pearl and she brings up that Haymitch said Peeta was getting better, and Katniss just shrugs it off saying, maybe, but he's changed. She points out to her that all of them have because of the arena. After training the next day, they make it to the dining hall to sit next to Finnick, Annie, Deli, and Gale. Her inner monologue is talking about how Finnick has just come to life after he got Annie back, and they're finally getting to see his true personality. But you will also never catch Finnick not holding Annie's hand. They are together at all times. You cannot split them up. Finnick is telling a story about sea turtles when Katniss sees Peeta standing right across the table behind an empty chair, holding a tray with 2 guards at either side. Deli instantly is like, oh, it's good to see you. Peeta also has wrist shackles on, and Joanna is like, oh, what's with the fancy bracelets? He explains that he's not trustworthy enough yet and actually needs her permission to even sit down at the table. Joanna is like, oh yeah, come sit, we're old friends. We had adjoining cells in the Capitol. We're very familiar with each other's screams. Annie at this goes to cover her ears like she does whenever she exits reality. Finnick shoots Joanna a look and then turns to Annie, starting to calm her down as best he can. After Annie is calmed down, Deli informs her that Peeta was the one to actually make her wedding cake. Annie kindly says thank you. And then, with a voice that reminds Katniss of the old Peeta, he says, "It was my pleasure, Annie." Finnick and Annie get up to go on a walk around District 13. Finnick says, "It was good to see you, Peeta." And Peeta says, "You better be nice to her, Finnick, or I might just try to take her from you." What? Now this could be a joke, but it would still be a strange joke to make right here. Peeta. And he says it so coldly it doesn't hit like a joke. And it's just so wrong because it's implying that he could have eyes for Annie when Katniss is sitting right across the table from him. Finnick lightly says, "Oh, Peeta, don't make me regret restarting your heart." Deli turns to Peeta and she's like, "He did save your life." Peeta's like, "Yeah, I know, but he did it for her or for the rebellion. He didn't do it to save me. I owe him nothing." Katniss is getting defensive of Finnick and says, "That should count for something." Peeta goes, "Yeah, a lot of things should count for something. But they don't make sense, like all the memories I have of us at night on the train that I'm pretty sure the Capitol didn't touch." And then he flips into a little more of a manic mode and asks, "Are you and Gale together now, or are we still dragging out the star-crossed lover thing?" Joanna confirms that they're still dragging out the star-crossed lover thing, and then Peeta starts to spasm and his hands close into fists. Gale and Joanna kind of tag team to be like, "Oh my word, they actually did turn you into an evil mutt version of yourself." Then Gale gets Katniss out of there. He walks her back to her room and she's like, "He just sees me as I really am." Gale grabs her arm before she slips in and says, "Trust me, he does not see the real you." A never good Gale moment. Round of applause for Gale. He was a normal, nice human being. Yay. He was better than the mutt version of Peeta. Wow, we're so proud of him. I'm really upset, apparently. I'm so sorry, Gale. And no, I'm not. Joanna comes in a little later, updating Katniss that Deli lost it on Peeta about the way he treated Katniss, and then Peeta just started arguing with himself as if he were different people. As they start to settle in for the night, she has to ask Joanna if she could really hear him screaming in the Capitol. She says yes. It was like the Jabberjays in the arena, except it didn't stop after an hour. Back to the training montage. Katniss is moved into some more advanced training, called SSC, which stands for Stimulated Street Combat. This gives her some hope that she may actually make it to the Capitol. Gale, Katniss, Finnick, and Joanna are all being filmed for propos as they train in the simulated street combat. And eventually, even Peeta joins them for the morning workouts outside. No shackles on anymore, but he does still have guards watching him. Of course, Katniss doesn't love it, but she's told to get over it, basically. And then, just a few days before they are about to start moving to the Capitol, they are told they will have a final exam to see if they're ready to go. And they actually have to take that right now. I'm sorry, imagine like a pop quiz, but it's your final exam. I would actually just leave. I would cry. I would be like, actually, I'm not going to the Capitol. I don't like tests. There are 4 parts to this exam. There's an obstacle course, a written tactics portion, weapons proficiency, and a simulated combat situation in the block, which will be designed to target your weakness. She doesn't have time to get nervous about the first 3, but there is a backlog at the block, probably due to some tech issues. That's all we really know. Her situation in the block was basically just to make sure she would actually listen to command, which is very valid. That's what they needed to test her because, yeah, that's her weakness. She doesn't listen to people ever. Luckily, she does well and she passes. When she exits the block, she is told to report to command almost immediately. She is practically skipping in that room. But then she realizes this isn't right. She shouldn't be going to command. She should be getting her hair buzzed. Bog smiles and shakes his head when he sees her and then asks to see her hand. He explains that she is in a special unit of sharpshooters, with Gale and Finnick and 5 other people she doesn't know. She is once again giddy because now she's in a cool squad with her friends, and this has nothing to do with the Mockingjay. Plutarch comes in now, pulling up a holograph map of the Capitol and putting it onto the table. He points to the flashing lights on the map and calls those pods, a fancy name for a booby trap. He had even created some of these himself because, you know, game maker. They have a map as recent as a few months ago, but now some are unmarked. They've definitely added more. Katniss wasn't aware that she was moving towards the table until her hand reaches out to cup one of the blinking lights. Then she notices somebody else standing right beside her, Finnick. He also touches one of the flashing lights and says, "Ladies and gentlemen," and Katniss finishes, "Welcome to the 76 Hunger Games." Katniss starts trying to laugh this off so they won't be like, oh, maybe we shouldn't send the traumatized girl to the Capitol into what's basically the 76 Hunger Games. Her and Finnick proceed to joke with Plutarch about how they didn't even need to train because they were the best trained for this already, because they've already been in 2 Hunger Games. This hollow literally just looks like the outline of an arena. There are traps everywhere, like the traps in the games, where the mutts are gonna come out of, or there's gonna be like fire and explosions, or a bunch of deadly crap. It's just spread around the Capitol. They're not joking when they say it's the 76 Hunger Games. That's what this is. After they get out of this meeting, Finnick turns to Katniss and is like, what am I going to tell Annie? Because Annie is not mentally stable. She does not need to hear that her husband is basically going back into the games. Him going into the war is already bad enough, but him going back into the war, but it's actually just another arena of sorts, not good for her. Katniss goes, exactly what I'm gonna tell my mother and Prim. Nothing. They know this is bad for them, but they're both just like, we hate the Capitol. We want to be part of the downfall. Let us go. Hoorah. They do have a little check-in with each other while they're here, and they're like, okay, we're still okay with going. Like, mentally, we're going to be okay to do this. And then they're both like, yeah, because Snow is going to be a player in these games. He's on the board. He's not safe far away from this arena. He's right in the center. These two are all set to go. Haymitch pops up. He comes to Katniss, and he's like, yo, Joanna, she's not coming to the Capitol. She had a little freak out during her time in the block. See, because when she was in the block, they flooded it. And then she started to panic really, really bad because how the Capitol tortured her was they would get her very wet and then electrocute her over and over and over again. So when she was freaking out about going into the rain, it wasn't because she didn't want to get wet, just because, ew, water. It was because PTSD, trauma. And when they flooded it, she freaked out and showed that she was not set to go into a war zone. Haymitch is like, you should probably go check on her. I have to go talk to Plutarch and let him know about this. He's not going to be happy because he wants as many victors as possible for the camera crews. Katniss looks at him and goes, does that mean you're coming too? He goes, no. Plutarch wants as many young and attractive victors as possible. Haymitch goes into the room, Boggs comes out. Katniss sees Boggs, and because Boggs is her commander now, she's like, hey, can I go to the woods during reflection hour today? And Boggs is like, yeah, sure, why not? Go into the woods, have fun, be safe. Katniss goes into the woods during reflection hour. She finds a pine tree, gets some pine needles, and stuffs them into a little bandage she had made and wraps them up. After she's done with that, she goes to the hospital to find Joanna. She just hands her this little, bag of pine needles at this point and says, here, it's for you to put it in your drawer. Because Joanna is from District 7, the lumber district. So this is a very comforting scent to her. She even starts tearing up. I mean, everything we've seen of Joanna, she's just been so thick-skinned and tough during this, but this is when she starts showing a little true emotion. And after she smells it, she says, it smells like home. Katniss tries to start a nice light conversation, but Joanna says, you have to kill him. Katniss is like, I was planning on it. She's like, swear it on something that means something to you. Katniss is like, okay, I swear it on my life. And Joanna's like, no, something that actually means something to you. She's valid for saying it, okay? Katniss has not been known to care about her own life that much. Unfortunately. Katniss is like, I swear on my family's life. Why do you think I'm going to the Capitol? I'm obviously going to kill Snow. She says it in a much nicer way and not like a modern Gen Z 20-year-old. After this conversation, the next few days just go by in a blur as they go into more and more and more training. One morning, Plutarch joins their squad and lets them know that Squad 451 has been selected for a special assignment. Katniss is over here. She's pumped. She's like, he's about to tell us we're on the mission to assassinate Snow. We've got the camera crews. We got sharpshooters. Here we go. But then Plutarch says they will be the Star Squad, the on-camera face of the rebellion. She is so disappointed, and Gale's the one out loud to say, so we're not going to see any actual combat. Plutarch is like, no, you may see some combat, but you won't be on the front lines. Finnick jumps in just saying, yeah, that's not what we want, Plutarch. He's like, this is how you're going to be the most useful during this time. And then he points to Katniss and is like, she isn't complaining. That's because Katniss is already planning how to sneak away and assassinate Snow by herself. So maybe let's not use Katniss as an example of a good soldier. They don't change Plutarch's mind. They're just gonna be the on-camera squad over here. We finally make it to the day that they're going to ship out to the Capitol. She's saying goodbye to her mom and Prim walks with her all the way to the hospital door and asks her, how do you feel? She's like, overall pretty good because you're out of reach of Snow. She says the next time we see each other, we'll be free from him. And then hugs Katniss and just says, be careful. She's thinking about saying a final goodbye to Peeta, but just can't get herself to do it. But she does grab the pearl that Peeta gave her in the games, because that Peeta is almost a completely different person in her mind from this Peeta that's currently here. Let's talk about the situation in the Capitol. I don't know why I'm doing this. Anyways, in the capital right now. The capital citizens have retreated further into the city, so the outskirts of the capital is where our people are. They're hanging out there and they're trying to carve out pathways into the center of the capital to President Snow's mansion. But there are a ton of pods on all of these paths, so it's not going to be a quick, let's just walk down the street and get there. They're going to have to slowly move block by block by block, taking out these pods, probably losing people in the process because they don't have all the information on where all of them are. They just know where quite a few of them are. Our Star Squad's main job is really for disinformation to the capital, to act like they don't really know where any of the pods are and they just get lucky when they get a pod. They're going around shooting pods, doing all of this for the cameras, but Gale, Katniss, and Finnick are never picked to shoot these pods because they're still unpredictable on what's going to happen, and they want to keep these people safe, so they get to do nothing, basically, besides look pretty. Now, how do they know where these pods are in the field? Well, all the commanders of the squads have this thing called a holo. So Boggs is the one to have the holo in their group. It's basically like this little hologram map. This holo only turns on for Boggs' voice though, so nobody else can really activate it, but once he has turned it on, anybody can use it. That way, if something happened to Boggs, they wouldn't be left without nothing. And also, if anybody says Nightlock 3 times, the whole device just blows up. It's really there to destroy any evidence that they know this much information about the capital if they were to be captured. So Katniss over here is just planning to somehow steal the holo from Boggs and then take it and run off to assassinate President Snow. Super easy plan, except big problem, Boggs never lets this thing out of his sight, much less out of his own grasp. He is always holding on to that thing. The 4th day they're there, they're going for their day like normal. Unfortunately, one of the twins, you have League 1 and League 2, hits a pod that's mislabeled and they get taken out a little early. That's why these 3 aren't allowed to shoot pods, because they're special and pretty. Yeah, anyways, we're already down 1 member of the Star Squad, unfortunately. And then the very next evening, a replacement arrives for the league that was taken down. You want to know who this replacement is? Oh, that's right. President Coin sent Peeta Malark. He's not mentally stable yet. No medicals, no guards. He just shows up. Not looking too good. He doesn't know why he's here. Oh, and they also gave this really not mentally stable boy who doesn't even have proper memories a gun. And if there was any doubt that he wasn't supposed to be on the Star Squad, he has Squad 451 stamped onto his hand. Boggs relieves him of his weapon. I feel like the interaction actually went, oh my word, why do you have a gun? Give that to me. Okay, I gotta go make a call. And he goes to make a call to President Coin to be like, yo, what the hell are you thinking? This is when Peeta is like, yeah, it's not gonna matter what he says. The president literally sent me herself, so I don't know what to tell y'all. She said the propos needed some heating up or something. I don't know why I'm here. I don't want to be here. Katniss knows that it is much more than that. This is a message from Coin that Katniss is much more useful to her dead. Oh, did you think Coin was a good guy? I don't know if I ever made her seem like one. I hope I didn't. If I did, I don't know how I did. But no. She is a very messy political player. You know her name Coin? They're 2 sides of the same coin. That's what President Snow and President Coin are. Do you get it? Boggs comes back from his phone call with Coin fuming and instructs his second-in-command Jackson to set up a 2-person watch around the clock for Peeta. She speaks up now and she's like, he's gonna try to kill me anyways. Why does Coin want me dead? He says, she denies the fact that she wants you dead. Then he pauses and he's like, she doesn't really like you. She wanted Peeta. But everybody else wanted you. And then it made matters worse when you asked for immunity for all the other victors. But of course, all of that could be overlooked with all you have done for the war. But the thing is, the war's gonna be over soon, and then they're gonna need to choose a new leader for Panem. And you're not gonna support Coin, so you're a threat. Because you have more influence than any other person alive. So now Katniss, at the age of 17, has 2 presidents that want to kill her. Because the people like her. How dare the people like her? And right now for Coin, if Katniss dies, she just becomes a martyr and feels the energy of the rebellion. But Boggs says, but that's not gonna happen on my watch. I'm planning for you to live a long life. Boggs is such an underrated character, like all throughout these books, all throughout the movies, but I love him so much. We need some more Boggs appreciation, please. He's an actual good guy. He's a good man. Katniss, who doesn't know how to accept kindness, is like, why? You don't owe me anything. And he says, because you've earned it. He's just the only character that I feel like actually sees her as a kid. I know she's 17, almost an adult, and has been through more than most adults will ever go through in their lives. I mean, of course he can't get her back to feeling that childhood innocence anymore, but Box is just trying to get her back to a place where she doesn't feel like she's gonna die all the time. And honestly, that's a really hard thing to do when the person you're trying to make feel safe is Katniss Everdeen. She then turns to Jackson and is like, okay, when's my watch? And Jackson's like, honey, I didn't give you a watch. Can you actually kill peeta if it came to it? She raises her voice for all the squad to hear and says, I wouldn't be shooting peeta. I'd be shooting a capital mutt. Again, her only focus in life is to kill President Snow. She has lost all her empathy, okay? Not her brightest moment, we can all accept that. Jackson is like, yeah, that doesn't really help your case. And Boggs is like, just put her on the watch, it'll be fine. A little later that night, they're having dinner, and Gale goes over to Katniss and he's like, so, when are you running away? And can I come? Katniss honestly isn't shocked that he caught on, but she's just hoping none of the others did. And honestly, she doesn't hate the idea of having him there to watch her back, so she's like, look, I can't advise that you come, but I wouldn't tell you not to. They're eating, they're chilling, and then Katniss is like, people are giving me some dirty looks. I wonder why that is. And she doesn't know until later that night she gets a call, and it's from Haymitch. And he's like, are you trying to provoke peeta? She gets all defensive instantly. Haymitch is like, yes, Coin sent him there to kill you. But peeta doesn't know that. So you can't blame him. Katniss goes, I don't. He goes, yes you do! And then he starts going on this rant about how she's just been punishing him over and over again for stuff he can't control. And how if the roles were reversed, peeta would not be treating her like this. Now, as soon as he says all this, she falls silent. Because she knows he's right. Because if it was to be the other way around and she was the one hijacked, peeta would have never left her side. And would be doing everything he can to help her. Haymitch just ends the call saying, you and me made a deal to try to save him, remember? After this call, she just goes to sleep, and then she gets up for her watch over peeta at midnight. Peeta is actually still awake. He's trying to make knots with a short rope that Finnick has obviously given to him. And it's like Finnick is echoing what Haymitch just told her. She can't think of anything to say to him, though, so they just sit there in silence for about an hour. Peeta speaks up eventually and says, these last few years must have been exhausting for you, trying to figure out if you want to kill me or not. Is he wrong? No, unfortunately no. She wants to snap back at him because she feels like that's an unfair take, but looking at it from Peeta's point of view, it's honestly a pretty fair opinion. So she calms herself down and she says, I never wanted to kill you. Except, well, when I thought you teamed up with the careers. After that, I always thought of you as a ally. They're talking a little more and he admits the real problem that he's having right now is he can't tell what's real and what's not real. And then Finnick, who's supposed to be asleep but is apparently not right now, speaks up and says, then you should just ask. That's what Annie does. He's like, who do I ask? Jackson is the one to say, you can ask any of us, we're your squad. Because she decided to take the watch with Katniss because, you know, Katniss is kind of like a loose cannon. And then Peeta, after thinking for a few minutes, looks at Katniss and goes, your favorite color is green? She confirms this and then tells him that his favorite color is orange. He looks really concerned by this and she's like, no, like the sunset orange. She starts letting words that describe peeta tumble out of her mouth, and then after a little bit, she just dives into her tent. She's like, no, I said too much. After they're done with some filming that day with the Star Squad, they get back to camp. And Jackson has made up a game for peeta called Real or Not Real, where peeta can ask anybody a question, and they will let him know if he's imagined it or if it's real. They get the watches worked out where Katniss, Finnick, or Gale are always paired up with another member of the Star Squad, so peeta always has somebody at night that he can ask his questions to. Gale is the one who mainly helps with stuff from 12, Finnick helps with stuff from the games, while Katniss is stuck with a lot of hard and awkward conversations about their relationship. Like, oh yeah, I did actually aim an arrow at your heart at one point, but I thought it was because you were coming to kill me because they just announced there was going to be one victor. I didn't actually want to kill you though. I'm so sorry about that. Lots of stuff like that. Eventually we get to the next day and our Star Squad goes out to film a much more complex propo today. As they're walking over to this location that they're going to be filming at today, peeta is staring at Pollux a little too much. And then eventually he goes on this whole thing about how he knows he's an Avox because of how his mouth is set or something. He can just tell by how he's holding his face. And he's like, I know this because there were Avox being tortured next to me called Darius and Lavinia. We finally get the name for the Avox girl that Katniss saw in the woods. They accidentally killed the girl very early on, so she was lucky and really didn't have to deal with being tortured that long, luckily. But they kept torturing the man, asking him questions, and of course he couldn't respond, so they just kept torturing him more and more and more. Because they didn't really want information, they just wanted Peeta to have to see it. Darius is also no longer with us. Peeta is looking around at all the stunned faces because he just went through gruesome details of how these people were tortured, and he's like, real or not real? Because nobody has answered him. Boggs is the one to speak up and go, real, to the best of our knowledge. She moves over to Gale, and they hug, because they finally know the name of the girl from the woods, and they also just got confirmed that Darius is gone. Katniss adds them to her personal kill list, but this just fuels Gale's hatred for the capital, and he is ready to destroy it completely. Gale today is actually assigned to hit this pod that will spray out bullets when it's triggered. He goes out, he shoots the pod, and they are all hiding in doorways to avoid the spray. After the pod has fully triggered, Boggs orders that it's safe and for them to move forward. Cressida's like, hold up, I need shots of everybody reacting to the bullet spray. So everybody has to go back to the doorway and act like they're hiding from bullet cover, and it just ends up with all of them laughing and making silly faces and Boggs having to be like, guys, please, you have to pull it together. But he's repressing a smile the whole time. Boggs is taking a second before they move ahead to check the hollow to see where they need to go, and he takes a step back onto an orange paving stone, and it triggers a bomb that blows off his leg. All their laughter turns into screams as reality comes crashing back down. There's another explosion, but she doesn't know where it comes from. She runs straight to Boggs, and she's the first one to reach him, and she's trying to think of some way to stop the blood flowing out of his leg, but doesn't know how to, and he's just asking for her to get his hollow. She eventually finds it after touching a lot of blood and blown off flesh, and gets it to Boggs. Everybody else is currently trying to help other people affected by the explosion that was already triggered. He has the hollow now. He types in a command that says unfit for command and tells it to transfer prime security clearance to squad 451 soldier Katniss Everdeen. Then he tells her to say her name. She says her name and then she's like, what did you just do? Jackson has now come over and tells them to prepare to retreat. I don't know if Boggs can retreat too well. He's missing a leg. At least one, maybe both. Then she sees that Finnick is yelling and pointing towards the end of the block, where a black oily substance is starting to come down the block towards them. Katniss has never seen anything like this, but they're in the capital. It's from a pod. She knows it's lethal. Gale and the League twin that's left starts shooting down the block they're about to go down to clear a path and clear out the pod so they can all run down safely and get away from this black oily tar substance that is just shooting out of the street like geysers. Katniss and one of the other Star Squad are trying to drag Boggs down the street, but he is crying out in pain. She's trying to think of a better way to get him to the end of the street and to a safe house, but they can't stop due to the black oily substance coming towards them. Then all of a sudden, Katniss is yanked backwards and she's looking up at Peeta, who is clearly taken over by his hijacked brain again. He is pushing the butt of his gun down, aiming to crush her skull until she rolls out of the way. And it just slams into the ground. Mitchell, another member of the Star Squad, comes over and basically just falls on Peeta, taking him to the ground, getting him away from Katniss and pinning him down. But Peeta is very strong, and he gets his feet under Mitchell and just launches him into the air. When he lands, there's a loud snap and a pod has clearly triggered. And there is now a net that holds Mitchell between 4 different buildings. And this net is covered in his blood due to it being barbed. Like barbed wire, spikes all over. He's no longer with us. Gale and League at this time have luckily shot open a door for all of them to go into to get away from this black oily substance, hopefully. Some people have restrained Peeta, they're getting him inside, and Katniss and Holmes drags Boggs into the building. The Star Squad is then forced to lock a now cuffed Peeta into a closet in there as they deal with everything else because they don't have time to deal with crazy hijacked Peeta right now. Finnick has to carry Masala up to the next level. League 1 and Cresta quickly follow him, and Katniss is calling out for Gale, and he comes up the steps coughing from the fumes of the oily substance down there. Boggs is now handing the hollow to Katniss, and he's saying something, but she can't hear him until she leans down closer to him. And he's saying, don't trust them. Don't go back. Kill Peeta. Do what you came to do. She's looking at his face and asking, what? But Boggs is gone. We're gonna take a little break, and I need some of y'all who maybe haven't experienced this before to know that we are in a war zone right now, and we are about to lose a lot of characters. So just mentally prepare yourself. A lot's about to happen. I'm gonna cry. You're probably gonna cry. It's all gonna be okay. We're gonna get through this together. We won't mentally be the same, but we'll make it out of this, okay? Katniss confirms to everybody that Boggs is gone. And the whole group knows that they have to get out of there because there are probably surveillance cameras on the street that have seen them with all the pods being triggered and know exactly where they are right now. So peacekeepers are probably currently on their way to get them. Jackson, the second in command, asks Katniss for the hollow she's holding because Jackson is the one that's supposed to get it. But Katniss doesn't give it over. And she's like, Boggs gave it to me. And Jackson's like, okay, why did Boggs give it to you? Mentally, Katniss is thinking, I don't know why Boggs gave it to me. He said a lot of stuff and then he died. I don't know what Boggs wants me to do right now. But out loud, she's like, all right, fake it till you make it. I'm gonna full send this lie and says, I'm on a special assignment from President Coin. And Boggs was the only one who knew. This right here, obviously, to us is a big fat lie, and it feels like a big fat lie to some of them. So this causes a whole big debate. Weapons are drawn, but eventually all the weapons are put down, and they're all like, okay, Katniss, we'll follow you. She gives them all the option to go back, but none of them take it. So now, they're all in on the plan that Katniss was sent here to kill Snow. Except, you know, the biggest hitch in this plan is that Peeta showed up. I hijacked Peeta. Why would Coin send a hijacked Peeta on the special secret mission to kill Snow? That doesn't make any sense. But we're all going with it right now. And Katniss is like, well, Peeta is here because he's seen inside the mansion before. He's been in there, so he might know his way around when we don't. They're like, okay, lead the way, Soldier Everdeen. And she's like, Jackson, I actually don't know how to work the hollow. Can you please figure out where we need to go? Let's recap. What is Katniss asking this well-trained group of soldiers to do right now? She's asking them to believe that President Coin trusted a 17-year-old girl, Katniss Everdeen, to go on a secret mission to kill President Snow that only Boggs knew about, assigned a fake second-in-command, lied to all these people about the Star Squad, and put a whole camera crew on the mission to kill Snow, also sent a hijacked Peeta to do the job as well. But no, they're all just going along with this. Oh, and also, she doesn't know how to use the hollow device. This seems like something they would have trained her on. Before they head out, they all put on their gas masks for the fumes outside. Luckily, the black oily substance has covered all the surveillance cameras on the street, and also, whenever they walk on it, it hides their footsteps. So, what a wonderful gift that the Capitol has given them. Yes, some people may have died for the gift, but it's okay. They get about 4 blocks away and break into another apartment and clear it. Nobody's there. And now Katniss has to be like, I am in charge of all of these people. And they're going to risk their lives for this secret mission that I made up. This is not a secret mission. This is a fake mission. She debates just telling all of them that this is a fake mission, but then she would have to answer to Coin, so she's kind of stuck just lying to all of these people. Then a little bit later, they hear a string of explosions come from where they left Boggs, and then without any of them touching it, the TV comes on. Half of the party is like, oh my word, what's happening right now? Ah! And Krista's like, guys, this is a normal thing that happened at the Capitol. They just turn on our TV for special announcements. Everybody chill out, okay? Thanks. This broadcast is showing the whole situation that they just went through. It identifies Boggs, Katniss, Gale, Finnick, Peeta, and Cressida by name. The rest of them, they don't care about. No name, nobody's to the Capitol. Castor is the one to point out that there's no aerial footage. Now, they had already suspected that the Capitol didn't have any working hovercrafts left, because otherwise, they probably would have seen one take President Snow far, far away, but he's still here. And the fact that they have no aerial footage of any of this means that they probably have 0 hovercrafts left. There's not a one hovercraft. Nobody's getting out of the Capitol. They're stuck. Then this broadcast cuts to a live feed of a reporter being like, all these people are dead. Notice how most of these people are still alive. So technically, yes, this is a good thing because this means the Capitol won't be looking for them for the next little bit as they are trying to recover the bodies. But this also means that all of their loved ones also think they're dead. So Prim thinks Katniss is dead. All of Gale's family thinks he's dead. And Annie over here, who's already mentally not doing well, thinks that Finnick is dead. And they're all probably having to grieve them. But they're perfectly fine. Well, not really. They're stuck in the middle of the Capitol, but like, they're alive. Broadcast finished and Gale's like, okay, well, what's our next move? Peeta, who has just been sitting there silently, speaks up now and says, isn't it obvious? We kill me. His argument is that he just killed someone. Finnick is like, you just pushed him off of you. You didn't know there was a pod there. But he's still arguing, being like, you can't take me. It's only a matter of time before I kill somebody else. Gale is the one to speak up and says, I'll kill you myself if that happens. I promise. He's like, okay, give me one of the nightlock pills. And Katniss doesn't know if he means to take it now or if the Capitol captures him. And she's like, no, you're necessary to the mission and we can't just leave you. After this whole conversation wraps up, Masala finds some food that was stockpiled in this house, which was a very normal thing for capital citizens to do in case anything like this ever happened. So everybody goes over to pick out something to eat that night. Katniss is still looking through it, trying to figure out what to eat, when Peeta comes over and offers her a can of lamb stew, her favorite. She thanks him for it and then digs in, because again, it really is her favorite. This means that Peeta actually remembered something. The TV pops up again to show photos of them like dead tributes. And then Snow comes on to congratulate the Peacekeepers on taking out the Mockingjay. But uh-oh, Beetie's taken over again, and now Coin is on the screen, who does a whole speech on how, dead or alive, Katniss is still the face of the rebellion. Katniss is like, wow, I had no idea how much I meant to her. Gale laughs at this. Everybody else is shooting her suspicious looks, because remember, everybody else just found out that she was trusted with a secret mission from Coin. Beetee gives the broadcast back to the Capitol, and Snow says, tomorrow, when we pull her body from the ashes, we will see that the Mockingjay is just a dead girl that could save no one. Finnick is the one to be like, yeah, they're not gonna find her, and then they won't find 11 other bodies, and then they're gonna be after us again. Katniss is trying to make the best out of this situation, and she's like, well, at least we can get a head start. But she doesn't even really know how to move through the insane amount of pods on the street. They're all sitting there trying to figure out a plan, and eventually Gale is like, can we move underground? They take a look at the hollows, and there is actually a way to access the tunnel from a couple of apartments over. They start to clean up the place to make it look like no one was ever here, but now there is only one problem of Peeta, who has planted himself on the couch, saying, I'm not going. I don't want to hurt anybody else. Finnick is like, Snow's people will find you here, and he's like, okay, give me a nightlock. He's like, no. Look, I can either knock you out and drag you with us, which is only going to slow us down, or you can just start walking. He starts begging all of them, though, to stop being noble and just let him die, and then he turns to Katniss, saying, please, I want to be out of this. She knows that he's just telling the truth, but she can't let him go. Unfortunately, Peeta has now become a piece in her games, even though it may be kinder to take him out. But she just echoes the fact that he can either come with them voluntarily or she can knock him out. He gets up to join them, and League One is like, hey, should we release his hands? And he drags his hands back to himself and is like, no. Katniss agrees to this, but gets the key from Jackson. They finally all make it down to the tunnels, and Pollux is clearly a little panicked. Castor has to explain that Pollux had been stuck down here for 5 years when he first became an Avox, and he literally never got to see the sun. Peeta, with some of his old charm, is the one to turn to Pollux and say, well, you just became our most valuable asset. With Pollux guiding them through the tunnels, they are making great time. Eventually they find a place to rest, but they only have about 4 hours to do so. Katniss falls asleep, but then is eventually woken up for her watch of Peeta. He's still awake, and she doesn't really know how to help him with the mess of lies in his head, but she's like, I can get him food, so she gets him a can of soup out of one of their packs. She opens it, hands it over to him, keeps the lid for herself because she does not trust this boy not to try something. She then asks him about something he had said one time when he was describing his memories, about how he was pretty sure something was real because it wasn't shiny. He doesn't know exactly how to explain this, but he does the best he can. At first, his brain was just complete confusion, but now he's able to pick out certain things because he's starting to recognize a pattern. The memories that were altered in his head have this strange, shiny light quality to them. Katniss actually understands what he means because she was once stung by a tracker jacker, and the memories from that time have that same, shininess to them. Let me just say, as somebody with aphantasia, I don't know what they're talking about. I am not the person to describe this. I can't see basic images in my head. I don't know what type of shiny images they're having, and I don't know what that would mean for my aphantasia brain. Does that mean I can't get hijacked? I don't know. This probably isn't something I should be wondering, but I'm spiraling right now, okay? I've been talking about the Hunger Games for a little too long, and I still want to watch the movie, so I don't know, man. They finish up this conversation, and then she's like, you still have some time to get some sleep. And then ever so slowly, she reaches out a hand to brush some hair off of his forehead. He goes still at her touch, but doesn't recoil. And this is the first time she has voluntarily touched him since the arena. He whispers, you're still trying to protect me. Real or not real? She says, real. Because that's what we do. We protect each other. Then he drifts off to sleep. A little bit later, slightly before 7, Pollux and her are working on waking everybody up because they need to get a move on. She's hearing the normal waking up noises, but she's also starting to hear something else. Oh, my heart just sunk. She shushes everybody and listens closely, and then she realizes it's voices repeating her name over and over and over again. Snow clearly knows that she is down there and has now sent a pack of mutts to get her. The mutts are starting to get closer. She's hearing it more clearly, And then all of a sudden, Peeta, who is still asleep, starts saying, Katniss, Katniss. And I'm sorry, that's terrifying. Katniss is also terrified by this and has an arrow aimed at him because she thinks he's connecting with these mutts somehow and is going to wake up and try to kill her. But then Peeta completely wakes up and says, Katniss, get out of here. It's okay, everybody, he was dreaming. It was a false alarm. Peeta is not getting hijacked by the mutts. Wonderful time. Anyway, she's like, okay, do you know what those are? Peeta, being very logical right now, says, I don't know what they are, but I know it wants to kill you. So let's go. She relaxes her bow and then she turns to everybody and she's like, hey, it may be a good time for us to all to split up. Because clearly they're just after me. Nobody is splitting up from Katniss, so they all just go out of the tunnel. Luckily, when they get out, it's clear that the creatures are coming from the other direction of where they wanted to go. So they get to start going towards where they wanted to go today anyways. They've covered about 3 blocks when they start hearing screams. Peeta informs them that it's a group of Avoxes that is getting killed right now because that's how Avoxes sound. So it's confirmed that these mutts aren't just here to kill Katniss, they're gonna kill anybody in their path. She again is trying to get everybody to leave, separate from her, and again, they're not having it. And now the screaming has stopped and the mutts sound a lot closer. And to add on to this, the sound is now also coming from below them. Pollux and her are looking for a faster route on the hollow when Katniss starts gagging. Jackson orders everybody to put on their mask. But there's no need for everybody to do that because this is a smell that only affects her. Because it's the smell of roses. How President Snow always smells. She explains this to them as quickly as possible and then they get out of there to the transfer area where delivery vehicles drive underground, so it's a much more open area. She triggers a pod, waits for it, and then they all start running past that area, and she knows that one misstep in the area they're currently in could trigger a pod called the meat grinder. She doesn't really want to trigger that pod. They're all running, and then suddenly a unmarked pod is triggered. And Masala is just stuck in this golden ray of light, and there's nothing they can do for him except watch his body dissolve. All of them are just stunned, not knowing what to do, and Peeta is actually the one to get all of them to start moving, saying, can't help, and then drives the rest of them forward. She skids to a stop before the next intersection, and then she hears a spray of gunfire, and she's looking for whoever triggered the pod, but it's actually just a group of peacekeepers coming directly towards them. And with the lovely meat grinder pod blocking their way, all they can do is return fire. Yes, they are outnumbered 2-1 right now, but they are all excellent shots. Once 3/4 of the peacekeepers are down, more start to pour in. But oh no, these aren't actually more peacekeepers coming. These are what we like to call the lizard mutts, but they're kind of humanoid at the same time, but they've got like this white reptilian skin over all of them. These lizard creatures just rip through the peacekeepers and then start skittering towards our group on all 4s. Oh my word, an actual terrifying scene. Katniss shouts for her group to follow her and starts going against the wall, avoiding the pod, and once her whole group is to the other side, she triggers the pod called the meat grinder finally. Then she grabs Pollux and is like, what is the quickest way above ground? They don't have time to check the hollow, they just start following him. He takes them to the main sewer, where they have to walk on this slippery ledge not to fall into the sewer water that would definitely, be really bad if they fell into. They eventually reach a ladder, and Pollux points up. This is the way to the surface. Katniss glances back at her party, only to notice that League 1 and Jackson are missing. Holmes has to explain that they stayed back to hold the lizard creatures off. She's like, we have to go back for them, and Holmes is like, do not waste their lives, motioning to where these lizard mutts are already skittering towards them through the sewers. Gale warns everybody before he shoots an explosive arrow directly at the lizard mutts. These mutts are hard to kill, but everybody opens fire at them, and this is where Katniss realizes that the rose smell is coming directly from the mutts. This was psychological warfare designed just for her. She's out of her body at this point. People are shouting at her, and she doesn't know what to do until somebody just shoves her on the ladder, and she starts to climb. Once she reaches the next platform, her head is cleared, and now she is just pulling people up into this next platform away from these lizards. She gets Cressida, she gets Peeta. She starts to think nobody else is coming, so she starts to scramble back down, but runs into somebody else on the ladder, and they just shout, get up! And it's Gale. Okay, I can do it, There's a cry from down below, and she is desperately trying to let her go back down to save them, and Gale has to be like, no one else is coming. Only mutts would be able to get up here now. But she can't accept that, and she shines her flashlight down there to see Finnick, who is struggling against 3 mutts who are tearing him apart. And then she sees a mutt rip his head back and bite his neck. Then Katniss' inner monologue is like, it's like I'm Finnick, watching images of my life flash before me. The mast of a boat, a silver parachute, Mags laughing, a pink sky, Beatty's trident, Annie in her wedding dress, waves breaking over rocks, and then it's over. She takes her hollow out and says, "Nightlock, nightlock, nightlock," and throws it down, and Pollux slams the lid of the hatch shut. And now, all that's left of our Star Squad is Pollux, Cressida, Katniss, Gale, and Peeta. Okay, so say goodbye to Castor, Pollux's brother. Say goodbye to the entire Star Squad besides the 4 I just mentioned. 5 I just mentioned. And then, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it because, as we all know, Finnick makes it to the very end of the book and he's back in District 4. And I'm pretty sure that's it because actually the lizards were just playing a prank and Finnick's fine. He walked away from that just fine. It was a silly little prank. He's alive. I don't know why you expect me to be more sad and like actually sobbing right now because Finnick's alive. He didn't die. Do you want me to put him over here? Sure, I'll put him over here. Sure, fine. I'll put him over here because the book said he's dead. He's not dead. He's fine. Obviously, Finnick is perfectly fine, but just because the book says these are the only 5 left, I'll put him over here, even though we all know that he makes it, okay? It's all good, guys. It's all good. Just put him right over here. He can hang out with Mags for a little bit. That's okay. Don't worry. He's not actually dead. No, he's not. He's not dead. Yeah, I'm just upset because Finnick found a new friend group in the lizard mutts and left Katniss behind. That's the only reason I'm upset. Because he's alive. Yeah, anyways, now that we know the fact that Finnick is just pretending to be dead, they know they have to get out of here right now because the lizard mutts are still a problem for these guys because they're not best friends with them. But only problem is, Peeta is curled up against the wall and he is about to go back into hijack mode. He's warning them all to leave because he knows he's about to go back there. She's accepting that she may actually have to kill Peeta here. But she knows that would mean that Snow has won, and she can't let that happen. Now, Katniss admits what she's about to do is probably one of the dumbest plans she has ever had, but she goes over to Peeta and kisses him. His whole body shudders, but he stays. She grabs his wrist and says, "Don't let him take you from me." Peeta is now panting as he's trying to fight off these nightmares that Snow has made his memories. And he says, "No, I won't let him." This is when she says, "Stay with me." And his pupils retract to a pinpoint, is what the book says, and then return to normal, and he says, "Always." Peeta is back in control now, so they climb up the Everladder and are in somebody's utility room. When they come out, they see a Capitol woman. She is about to call out for help, and Katniss shoots her in the heart before she can make a noise. They search through the whole apartment, but nobody else is there, luckily. They have no clue who she was calling out to. She now takes a look out the window to see people in the Capitol just going about their day normally. They have made it back to the populated area of the Capitol. She looks back at her companions and knows this is not the time to attack Snow, though. Gale had received a wound on his neck, and he is still losing a lot of blood right now. Peeta is sitting on the couch biting into a pillow. Pollux is weeping. Cressida is standing right by her side, but is so pale, she looks bloodless. Katniss finds this woman's closet and calls in the others to get dressed so they can blend in with the rest of the Capitol. As they're working on finding outfits, she sees that Peeta's cuffs have made his wrists bloody. And she goes over to unlock them, and he's like, "No, they hold me together." So they agree to keep them on him still. Now, luckily for our group right now, it is cold outside, so they have coats and stuff so they can cover all of their weapons and armor and all that good stuff and get dressed in the frilly looks of the Capitol. After all their faces are covered, they march out the door together. And then she's like, "Hey, Cressida, do you know any place to go?" As Cressida is thinking about this, Katniss sees an emergency report that shows all of the Star Squad's faces as alive and wanted suspects, meaning they don't know who just died in the lizard attack. And of course, they wouldn't be wrong by saying Finnick's still alive because he just teamed up with the lizards. Guys, come on. Katniss is like, "Hey, Cressida, we need somewhere." And Cressida's like, "Okay, there's one place we can try." She takes them to a store that sells fur undergarments. And sitting behind the counter of the store is the strangest woman Katniss has ever seen. She's definitely taken surgical enhancements to the extreme. It's gone wrong, and she has tattooed gold and black stripes. Her nose has been flattened, so it barely exists. She has whiskers. She looks like a feline. This is when we meet Tigress. Cressida takes off the wig she was wearing and says, Tigress, we need help. Katniss places this name to one of the stylists that had worked in some of the earliest games that Katniss can remember, but she doesn't work in the games anymore. After Tigress doesn't say anything, Cressida's like, Plutarch said you could be trusted. She just looks over all of them and then turns away, and there's a sound of sliding and waves them all back. She has slid back a panel of the wall that was behind some furs. And Katniss is just standing there looking at a steep, stony stairway. And she's like, this is all a trap. And can we really blame her for thinking that way? No. She's like, did Snow ban you from the games? Tigress just stares at her, and she just says, I'm going to kill him, you know. A smile just spreads across Tigress's face. Katniss is like, okay, I trust this lady, and goes down into the creepy stairway. It leads to a small space, but a space that could go unnoticed for a long time. It's filled with furs and other stuff, so they are able to make comfy beds for themselves, and once they're down there, she starts stitching up Gale. Then gives him some painkillers and tells him to rest. She then goes over to Peeta to clean his wrists. He doesn't want her to at first, and then she's like, if you don't clean them, they will get infected. And he says, I know what blood poisoning is, Katniss, even if my mother isn't a healer. She asks him, you said that same thing to me in the first games, real or not real? He says, real. And he didn't have to question it at all. He asks if she got the medicine to save him, and she says, real. They talk about this memory a little more, and then he says, I'm so tired, Katniss. But he won't go to sleep until Katniss has shackled him to the stairs, which leaves him in a very strange position, but he's out very quickly. She tells everybody to just get some sleep because with where they are right now, there's no point in having anybody guard the doors because what are they gonna do with a bunch of stormtroopers? I haven't even watched Star Wars all the way through. Okay. Because what are they gonna do if a bunch of peacekeepers come bursting through the doors? There's not another way out of here. They're gonna be trapped. Katniss gets a little bit of rest, wakes up, and then she starts eating some food and just thinks over all of the deaths that have happened. Death 1 and 2, Mitchell and Boggs, they lost them on the block. 3, Masala, melted by the pod. 4 and 5, League 1 and Jackson, who stayed behind to give them more time to escape the mutts. 6, 7, and 8, Castor, Holmes, and Finnick. Again, he didn't actually die, guys. It's fine. Okay, fine. Fine. If you actually haven't read the books or watched the movies, yes, Finnick is actually dead. But to my brain, he's not. Okay? Got it. Cool. Anyways, Castor, Holmes, and Finnick, dead to the lizards. She truly believes that all of these deaths lie solely on her shoulders. Because she made up this plot to assassinate Snow. So when everybody wakes up, she tells them exactly what she has done. Gale goes, Katniss, we all knew you were lying about Coin sending you to assassinate Snow. She's like, well, yeah, maybe you knew, but the others didn't. Cressida's like, yeah, no, we knew, Katniss. You're a really bad liar. She's confused on how they all knew, and he's like, you literally told everybody in command that one of your things was that you get to kill Snow. We knew Coin wasn't going to allow you to come over and kill Snow in this way, okay? We're not dumb. She's like, yeah, but I didn't want to kill Snow like this. This has been a complete disaster. Gale goes, no, this has been a very successful mission. We have infiltrated into the enemy camp, showing that the capital's defenses can be breached. We've thrown the entire city into chaos, trying to find us. Cressida and Gale then spend a lot of time convincing Katniss that this wasn't a horrible move on her part. She turns to Peeta now, asking for his opinion, and he says, I think you still have no idea the effect you have. None of these people that came along with you were idiots, Katniss. They knew what they were doing. They followed you because they believed you could kill Snow. His voice is the one that finally reaches her, and she knows she has to complete this mission. Problem. After Finnick's not there anymore. After Finnick's whole speech, Snow doesn't really make public appearances anymore because everybody in the Capitol kind of hates him because Finnick was like, yeah, your president has killed a lot of people. Katniss is like, well, we know something Snow would come out for, my execution. Peeta's the one to be like, no, there are so many other plans we can go with first. That is a last resort. Because they could just decide to keep you and torture you for information instead. They're all just sitting there now, thinking for ways to get Snow out. When Tigress is like, hey guys, I have food up here if you want it. They go up, and on the counter up there is a stale hunk of bread, some moldy cheese, and half a bottle of mustard. Yeah, not everybody in the Capitol has full stomachs these days. They all eat though, and then head back downstairs to get some more sleep. That night, as she is trying to fall asleep, she overhears a conversation between Peeta and Gale. They're basically just talking about who she likes more and who she's going to end up with. Gale's the one to be like, that's probably not going to be an issue for much longer because I doubt all of us make it out of this thing. But if she does have to pick still, she'll pick the one that she can't survive without. Katniss cannot believe that he just said that, because there was no indication that she would choose for love or desire. No, just survival. She's now pissed at both of them, and at 17 has committed to a life of singleness right here in this random little area of the Capitol. They eventually all fall asleep, and then during breakfast next day, they're sitting with Tigress watching her TV, and they're seeing that the rebels are now sending unmanned cars down through the streets of the Capitol, setting off a bunch of pods as they go, basically clearing the way for the rebel forces. Look outside to see people running down the streets just carrying their belongings. Some are dressed, some are in pajamas, some are in just other states of chaos. Tigress is like, I'm gonna go out to investigate, and then she isn't back till 6 o'clock that evening. It turns out she has spent a lot of the day gathering information and also trading her undergarments for food because, people were cold and they forgot a lot of stuff. They're watching the TV that evening. A lot of the people in the Capitol's inner city have not opened their doors to the other Capitol citizens. So that evening, as they're watching the TV, the head peacekeeper is laying out rules on how many citizens each person is expected to take in, depending on how big their apartment is. Even adding that shopkeepers should also be prepared to offer up their floor space. And then even adds that some lucky citizens will be welcomed into the president's mansion. Peeta points out to everybody that they probably only have a day or so before Tigress is going to be expected to open her doors to have Capitol citizens stay here, so they need to get a plan figured out soon. Then the reporter gets to talk about a lovely incident that happened about a man getting beaten to death because he looked kind of like Peeta. It wasn't Peeta, obviously. Peeta is right here and he was just talking. But, yeah, people are going crazy and they really don't like these people anymore. Then they get a brief rebel update, and it turns out that Route C is only about 4 blocks away from where they are right now, so they're getting close. Katniss goes off to wash some dishes. Gale comes over to help her, and they start discussing plans. She's like, I'm leaving in the morning. And Gale's like, okay, cool, I'm coming with you. They even think that they could have Pollux and Cressida be useful somehow to their plan, but they know that Peeta wouldn't be okay with all of them just leaving him here. They lay out their plan to everybody, and Peeta's okay with everybody splitting up, but he's like, I still want to go out on my own though. I could still cause a diversion if need be, and if I feel like I'm losing it, I'll come back here. Gale then reaches for his nightlock pill, gives it to Peeta in case he is captured so he can take it before he's taken back to Snow. Peeta is just concerned and is asking what Gale will do if he's captured. He explains that he'll have Katniss. She can shoot him if need be. Katniss reaches out, closes Peeta's hand around it, and says, take it. No one will be there to save you. They all go to bed, get a fitful night of rest, and then at 5 o'clock, they're up. They leave a can of salmon for Tigress as a gift because she only eats raw meat, and they still have some canned food, so they leave her the salmon as a thank you. Tigress is touched by this, and then she spends the next hour getting all of them ready to blend in with all the Capitol citizens. So what is the actual plan for today, you may be asking? Well, let me tell you about it. What's going to happen is Cressida and Pollux are going to go out first, and then Gale and Katniss, a little after them, will slip into the crowd and try to find the group that's going to be staying in the president's mansion to get in with them and get inside the mansion. And then a little after they go out, Peeta's gonna come out and follow behind them so he can create a disturbance if needed. Cressida and Pollux have already gone, but before Katniss slips out with Gale, she hugs Peeta and says, don't do anything foolish. And then he assures her he will only create a distraction if it's absolutely necessary. And then they hug, and he actually hugs her back. It doesn't feel like the old Peeta's embrace, but it is still warm and nice, is what Katniss describes it as. Tigress is the one to be like, all right, kids, time to go. And then Katniss goes over, kisses Tigress's cheek, and leaves. They walk into the crowd, and they get to hear the lovely sound of gunfire, crying, groans of agony. And it doesn't sound that far away. As they're walking through the crowd, though, she's trying to see if she can see Cressida and Pollux, but she can't quite find them. But she does make contact with a little girl in a lemon-colored coat. And Katniss goes to Gale and she's like, oh, we gotta fall back. This little girl has made direct eye contact with me. We're gonna form a wall between me and this little girl, because you know little kids, they just be saying stuff. If she saw somebody that kind of looked like Katniss Everdeen, she might go, oh my word, that's Katniss Everdeen. Her face has been plastered everywhere. I wouldn't trust a little kid not to say anything. I would also form a wall in between me and the little kid. She's trying to tell Gale that they need to split up because of this little girl possibly noticing her, when gunfire just starts ripping through the crowd they're in. Screams are coming from everywhere, and then another round of gunfire comes from behind them. They drop to the ground and start crawling toward the shops. They don't know who's shooting right now. It could be peacekeepers, it could be rebels. They have no clue, but Katniss does see the little girl she made eye contact with kneeling next to someone that was holding her, trying to wake them up when they are clearly never waking up again. And then another wave of gunfire comes, hitting this little girl in the chest. Gale then points at the roof, being like, up there, it's the rebels. The rebels are trying to shoot the peacekeepers, but it's clearly not going well. Apparently none of them are actually good at aiming, because they're hitting everybody else but the peacekeepers. They know they could stop right now, go on the roof, rejoin with the group of rebels, but they are on the mission to kill Snow, so they just continue hugging the wall trying to get away from this area. They eventually run across a peacekeeper who is propped up against the wall, clearly injured. The peacekeeper is trying to ask for help, and then Gale just takes his gun and knocks him out with it. So, yes, the wrong guy, unfortunately, Mr. Peacekeeper Man. I would be sorry, but I'm not that sorry. And then he shoots another peacekeeper, so Katniss can also have a gun. Everybody has guns now. His thinking with this is if they both have peacekeeper guns, it explains why they have weapons, because they just look like desperate civilians. But honestly, it doesn't really matter who anybody is anymore, because everybody's just shooting at everybody at this point. It's chaos. Peacekeepers are marching in their direction right now. But then a pod gets triggered, and a gush of steam comes up that starts boiling anybody that was in its path. And yeah, I may have said it was pure chaos before, but somehow add to that, because once that pod is set off, Capitol citizens, peacekeepers, rebels, they're all just running all over the place now. They hear people coming their way, and Gale hisses, "Get down." This is actually a group of rebels getting further into the city. Gale and Katniss have decided to play dead. They are on the ground just laying there. The rebels are stepping over them, some are avoiding the dead bodies, and some are purposely kicking them or stepping on them. After this group of rebels have passed, they get up again and go to the next block, where they think they finally have a break, until they hear a cracking sound. They're looking for what got set off by this pod, but can't find anything. The ground beneath her starts to shift, and she just shouts, "Run!" A seam has opened up in the streets, and the two sides are folding in like this, causing anybody who is in that area to fall into a pit where there seems to be mutts to finish off anybody who didn't die by the fall. She has to jump for the intersection to make it, and she still just makes it to the edge, so she's holding on. She is able to inch herself over to somewhere where she can swing her leg up and get herself all the way up so she doesn't fall into the pit and die. But Gale is not right next to her, so she starts looking for Gale and wondering if he's even still alive right now. She eventually sees him at a door, holding onto the doorknob so he doesn't fall in. I believe he has a little ground under him, but it's a very thin sliver, so that's why he's holding onto the door like that. He is knocking on this door, but nobody is letting him in. Katniss is shouting for him to move. He does, and then she shoots the door handle so he can go inside. He swings into the house, landing in a heap. And she's relieved knowing that Gale is safe until a pair of white-gloved hands grab him. Peacekeepers have their hands on Gale. If they see his face, they will know who it is, and they will take him and torture him. Gale meets her eyes and is mouthing something clearly, but she doesn't know what he's saying. He then just shouts for her to go, and she doesn't know where anybody else is, so she just starts running. As she's running away, she realizes Gale doesn't have any nightlock. Gale was asking her to shoot him, because they don't know if they're going to win this war at this point. He doesn't want to be taken by the Capitol. He knows too much, and they will torture him until they get those answers. And she is just filled with guilt over this, because she knows she has failed him. She falls into a doorway crying as this reality comes crashing down on her, that the Capitol has Gale. They had Peeta, and look what they did to him, and now they have Gale too. And she knows her only hope to get Gale back is to make the Capitol fall before they can do anything to him. She composes herself and falls in behind two older men, because nobody's going to expect Katniss Everdeen to be hanging out with two old men. That's her logic, okay? These two men stop when they reach the next intersection, causing Katniss to almost bump into them. She realizes it's because they've made it to the city circle, and she can see the president's mansion. This circle is filled with people, so nobody's going to notice her. She just starts weaving her way through the crowd. She's trying to get to the mansion when about halfway there, she notices a concrete barricade that's about 4 feet high that forms a rectangle right in front of the mansion entrance. She's thinking this is the group that's going to get to go inside the mansion, but then as she gets a little closer, she sees that it's all kids. Snow is using them as protection, basically forming a human shield. As she's trying to figure out what to do now, the crowd shifts left, and then somebody screams, "Rebels!" She swings up onto a light pole, seeing that, yes, the rebels have arrived in the city circle. She's looking for pods, expecting them to start detonating, but that doesn't happen. What does happen is a hovercraft with the Capitol seal flies over, and silver parachutes start falling down to the children in this rectangle area. All the kids are eagerly grabbing these because they've seen it time and time again in the games. These containers hold something good, but then 5 seconds later, they all explode. The snow around and in this barricade is now red, with undersized body parts scattered throughout. It's clear to Katniss that the Peacekeepers didn't know this was about to happen because they are yanking open that barricade right now. And then another wave of Peacekeepers is coming in as well. But then Katniss notices it's not Peacekeepers. It's rebel medics. And then something even more shocking, Katniss catches a glimpse of a blonde braid. Then she watches this girl take off her own coat, put it on one of the kids, as they are wailing in pain. Now that the coat is off, she can see the little ducktail sticking out from where her shirt is tucked into her skirt. Katniss starts pushing through the crowd, trying to get to Prim, shouting her name over the roar of people right now. And then once she's almost to the barricade, Prim catches sight of her. Remember, Prim thinks her sister is dead. She sees her, she starts to form Katniss's name, and then the second round of bombs go off. A ball of flame erupted from this explosion, going into the crowd, and it caught Katniss as well, as she had turned to run away. And now the flame is just running up the back of her body. Cut to, Katniss is now out and in a weird dream state now, just thinking, let me die. She eventually starts to come to, and she can just feel how much pain her throat is in. She also can smell burn medicine, and she hears her mother's voice. She's forced to face that this is her reality. She's a badly burned girl, and her sister is dead. The whole reason she became the Mockingjay was because she wanted to protect her sister. But now, at the end of all of this, her sister is still dead. Prim was never going to make it out of this story. This was not something Suzanne randomly decided and said, maybe I kill her sister. No, she knew this from page 1. And she's kind of evil for that, but I love her. Katniss continues to go back and forth between her dreamland and reality and back and forth, but one day, she's forced to, once again, feed herself, use her own muscles, take herself to the bathroom. And eventually, Coin comes in saying, don't worry, I've saved him for you. Honey, I don't think she's worried. Her sister's dead. She's a shell of a human. Katniss doesn't answer Coin because Katniss hasn't talked at all since she's woken up. The doctors are confused. She doesn't have any vocal cord damage, so eventually they just have to assume that this silence was brought on by trauma. And I mean, wow, really? She's having a trauma response? It's not like you made a teen girl the head of a rebellion, then she got badly burned and had to watch her sister die right in front of her. No, I'm so shocked she's having a trauma response to that. People keep bringing Katniss information on the war, even though she has asked for none of it. And here's what we know. The Capitol fell once those parachutes went off. Coin now leads Panem. And troops have been sent out to deal with the small pockets of Capitol resistance, I guess. Snow is currently being held as a prisoner, awaiting his trial, which will lead to his execution. Pollux and Cressida have been sent out to the districts to cover the wreckage of the war. And Gale, who took 2 bullets escaping, is now in 2, mopping up the remaining Peacekeepers. Peeta is also still in the burn unit, meaning he followed Katniss close enough to be close to that blast. And, well, her mother currently is burying her grief in her work. But Katniss's grief is burying her because she has nothing to do. When she's released from the hospital, she is given a room in the president's mansion. Her mother is barely around, so it falls to Haymitch to make sure she's taking her medicine and eating. She spends most of her days just wandering around the mansion. She hates bathing at all because she has to see the patchwork that is her skin right now, as she's a recovering burn survivor. She doesn't really care about what it looks like, it just brings back the memories of what happened and what took her sister from her. A doctor will still show up to check on her and try to talk her through stuff, but Katniss doesn't respond, so this doctor normally just falls asleep and acts like Katniss is cooperating with them. Then one afternoon, she takes a different route than normal around the mansion and finds herself in a strange part of it. She's trying to find someone to direct her back to the normal part she's in when she smells roses. She begins to panic and then realizes no mutts are coming. She just must be close to the gardens. She turns a corner and finds 2 guards staring at her, guarding a doorway. When she tries to go in, they block her from going in, simply telling her she can't go in. I mean, I feel like she kind of got the point, but thanks for also verbalizing that. But then, a woman from behind her says, let her go in. She turns back to see Paylor. These are her soldiers, not Coins. Now, her motive for wanting to go into this rose garden is to get a rose to put on President Snow before she executes him. She finds the right one, she's about to cut it, when a male voice says, that's a nice one. It's Snow. She's looking for him, but can't find him, then moves around a corner and sees him sitting on a stool. He looks well-groomed, he's in fine clothes, but he does have manacles around his ankles and wrists, and a tracking device on. He goes on saying, I was hoping you would find your way here. This is why Paler had let her in. She wanted Katniss to see this. Snow isn't in some prison underground. No, he's still living in luxury. Because Coin is setting the example that even horrible presidents at the end don't get treated poorly. Yes, they're setting him up to execute him, but they have no reason to treat him this nicely. He should be in an actual cell. But again, Coin is playing the long game. She's like, oh, well, if I ever end up getting dethroned, I don't want to be put in a cell, so I'm going to treat him nicely, so we're setting the example that you have to treat the presidents nicely, even if they're horrible people. Snow goes on, though, saying he was so sorry to hear about her sister, and it was a pointless death because he was about to surrender anyways. She doesn't understand what he's saying, though, because the hovercraft that dropped the bombs had a capital seal on it. He sees her look of confusion and goes, oh, if I had a hovercraft, I would have taken myself out of here. Obviously, I'm not above killing children, but when I take life, it's for a specific reason. And there was no reason for that. Katniss is like, okay, I figured it out. He's lying to me. But again, he goes on saying it was a masterful move on Coin's part, because it made it look like he bombed the children of the capital himself, causing the frail alliances he had left to snap. He even mentions how Plutarch must have been part of that plan because it has a game maker's touch. He adds on, I mean, of course they weren't aiming for your sister, but things happen. This is when she has a little flashback to the day she had walked into special weaponry. And Beetee and Gale were talking about different traps. And Gale was talking about a trap that played on humans' sympathy. The first bomb would kill the victims, and the second bomb would kill those coming in to rescue them. And then again, Snow starts talking, and he's going on about how he failed to see Coin's plan to let the capital and the districts destroy each other so she could step into power, with District 13 barely affected by any of this. She had this plan from the beginning, but Snow was busy watching Katniss, and Katniss was busy watching Snow. He says, I'm afraid we were both played for fools. She can't let this be true, so she utters the first word she has spoken since her sister's death, and says, I don't believe you. Snow just shakes his head and goes, oh, I thought we agreed not to lie to each other. She leaves after this and finds Paler still waiting in the hall, and she asks her, did you find what you were looking for? She holds up the white rose in answer and goes back to her room. She continues to think over all of this, but the thing that keeps bringing her back to Coin being the one who did this was that it was Beetee and Gale's trap. They designed this. Then she starts thinking about how everything about this war went according to Coin's plan, except for her. And now she's wondering how Prim even got approved to go to the Capitol. District 13 doesn't send out 14-year-olds to the Capitol. They weren't training them for soldiers or the medical field to go to the Capitol. She would have had to get special permission from somebody very high up to go. And now she's questioning if Coin did this to push her over the edge or to plant her firmly on her side, because Katniss is supposed to believe that Snow did this. She knows right now she needs somebody to work this out with. But most of the people she would do that with are dead, and Peeta is, well, still not doing all that great overall. He's doing better, but I feel like working out this plan with him would set him back a few paces, honestly, to figure out that District 13 was lying to them the whole time. And Gale is so far away, and also, could she even tell him without blaming him for Prim's death? She finally decides to talk to Haymitch, who has been kind of watching over her, but he's like still an alcoholic, so I'm not doing the best job of looking over her, okay? She gets to his room. It's a mess. I know, big shock. She tries to wake him up the normal way, but then once again has to result in dumping water in his face. He wakes up, flinging his knife around again. Obviously, still is not completely relaxed, even though the Hungergames should be gone. They have a few words with each other, and then she says, I need your help. And he goes, what, more boy trouble? And she's had it already, so she just starts walking towards the door. He starts going after her, but she's already far ahead of him and finds a nice wardrobe to hide in. Guards eventually find her and wrangle her back to her room, but she was in there quite a while. A very hungover Haymitch is waiting in her room to talk to her, but she's not talking again. He tries and tries, but then figures out it's pointless and just tells her to go take a bath. She's trying to relax in this bath, but then her eyes snap to the rose, and she has to get up and cover that up. As she's doing this, there's a very quick knock at her door, and then her prep team comes flying in. They're all smiling at her, but they're not doing a great job hiding the shock on their face from seeing her body. Octavia gets out, surprise, but then burst into tears. They're here because today she will be assassinating Snow. So of course, they're going to get her back to Beauty Base 0. Her inner dialogue is like, I can't blame Octavia for crying, because honestly, if I was supposed to get me back to Beauty Base 0 and it was this impossible task, I would also cry. Once they have prepped her, they take her back into her room and she finds Effie sitting in a chair, looking unchanged, besides a vacant look in her eyes. They say hi, Effie kisses her on the cheek. Then she says, well, it looks like we have another big day. Then she heads out to go check on the arrangements while the prep team finishes their prep. The prep team lets Katniss know that Plutarch and Haymitch had to fight to keep Effie alive, but since she was a prisoner of the Capitol the whole time, they were able to save her, luckily. She makes a comment saying, I guess it was a good thing you guys were kidnapped after all. Yeah, because all the other prep teams and stylists are dead. So, at least they got to live, just got some abuse for a little bit there, but they made it out. Probably changed forever, which, not good in that way, but like, at least no more Hunger Games. Anyways, they finally get her looking camera ready and she is dressed in Cinna's Mockingjay outfit once again. She looks in the mirror and she is shocked to see how normal she looks. Then there's a knock on the door and Gale comes in, asking if she has a minute. The prep team panics and just runs into the bathroom. They're like, where do we go? Bathroom. He hands her a sheath with one small normal arrow, explaining that it's symbolic because it will be the last shot of the war. She stands just looking at him saying, you didn't come to the hospital. He doesn't say anything. So she asks, was it your bomb? But Gale doesn't know. Neither does Beatty. Then he says, but does it even matter? You'll always be thinking about it. She doesn't say anything because he's right. She can't separate that moment from him. He says, that was the one thing I had going for me, taking care of your family. Shoot straight. Then he just touches her cheek and leaves. So, Gale, could you not have maybe said like something along the lines of, I'm so sorry about Prim? Instead of just being like, bummer, you're never gonna choose me now, bro. That sucks. Anyways, I don't know if that was my bomb or not, but the bomb I designed would have done the same thing to other people, so I don't know, man. I'm so sad. Peace out. My guy, what is wrong with you? No, literally, what is wrong with you? Look, here's my thing. I get it. Gale did not personally kill Prim. He does not need to take responsibility for killing Prim, I don't think. Maybe he needs to take responsibility because, like, he invented the bomb, kind of, but he didn't know it would be used. He knew it would... No, actually, he knew it would be used in that way. I'm sorry, I change my opinion on him every day in this moment. I hope you just saw that spit fly out of my mouth. But in reality, Katniss's reaction is very fair. She doesn't hate Gale, but she won't be able to separate that moment from him. In my headcanon, they don't talk after this moment, ever. That's it. Gale is out of her life. After he leaves, Katniss accepts that she will never be able to fully forgive him, but that's because she will never be able to find a concrete answer to this. She gets her prep team from the bathroom and says, we've got an audience waiting. She's then directed to what she thinks is a production meeting, but when she walks in, it's the other 6 victors. Peeta, Joanna, Enobaria, Annie, Haymitch, and Beatty. She asks, what's this? Haymitch admits they have no clue, but is like, it seems to be a gathering of the remaining victors. She's shocked that this is all that's left of victors, but it's because the victors were targeted from both sides. They were targeted by the Capitol and also by the districts. Joanna is not happy that Enobaria is here because she was just kind of living it up in the Capitol while they were getting torture. But Coin comes in saying she's protected under the Mockingjay deal, where Katniss agreed to be the Mockingjay for their immunity. Katniss sits down at Coin's direction to do so, and Coin gets straight to the point. She brought them here to settle a debate. Snow will be executed today. We already knew that. Peeta, please. Thank you. Anyways. And in the coming weeks, hundreds of his accomplices will be tried and sentenced to their deaths as well. But the districts don't seem to find this a sufficient form of punishment. Some people even want complete annihilation of those that held a capital citizenship. But because they need to maintain a sustainable population, they can't do that. But an alternative has been placed on the table, and they can't come to a consensus on what to do. Now, what is this alternative, you may ask? Well, it's that they have another Hunger Games, using the children that are related to those that held the most power. Now, let me make it clear. Right now, they're choosing whether to have another Hunger Games with capital children, or to just let the kids live and not kill all the capital citizens. All 7 of the victors turn to Coin, and Peeta says you have to be joking. She confirms that this is not a joke, and if they are to hold the games, it will be known that it was done with their approval. But the individual votes will be kept secret. Haymitch is like, was this Plutarch's idea? And Coin goes, no, it was mine. It seemed to balance the need for vengeance with the least loss of life. And then she goes, you may cast your votes. Peeta bursts out, no, of course I vote no, we can't hold another Hunger Games. Joanna says, why not? Seems fair to me. Plus, Snow has a granddaughter. I vote yes. Baria also says yes. Peeta is completely baffled, saying, "This is why we rebelled, don't you remember?" Then he says, "Annie?" She says, "I vote no, and so would Finnick if he were here." Joanna's like, "Well, he's not because Snow killed him." All right, Joanna. Okay, spitting facts, I understand. But whoa! Beatty also votes no. And now it's down to Katniss and Haymitch. Katniss is wondering if the Hunger Games started 75 years ago because a few people were in a room exactly like this. She realizes nothing changes. All the people she loves are dead. And yet they're still talking about the Hunger Games. She thinks everything through and says, "I vote yes for Prim." Haymitch is just watching Katniss, and she's wondering if this is the moment they find out how alike they truly are, and if he truly understands her. Haymitch says, "I'm with the Mockingjay." Quinn goes, "Excellent! Now we need to get to our places for the execution." Katniss hands the rose to her, saying, "Make sure to put this right over Snow's heart." She says, "Oh, well, of course, and I'll make sure he knows about the games." They get to the execution, and it is taking place right in front of the president's mansion. When Snow is marched out, the audience goes insane. They tie him to a post, and Katniss now realizes why she had no training for this, because he is literally only 10 yards away from her. He's coughing, a bloody dribble runs down his chin. He's not doing good. She looks at him as she has her arrow aimed at his heart. But then, at the very last second, she shifts her bow up, shooting Coin. Coin then collapses over the side of her balcony and plunges to her death. Katniss is only aware of Snow's laughter and sees more blood coming out of his mouth. He coughs again, he leans forward, and there's blood just spewing out of his mouth at this point. She's now thinking about what her future will hold as the assassin of Panem's president. She's looking around for her people, trying to say goodbye to them once again, because she knows she's not gonna get to live after she did this. That's not happening. She mentally says goodbye to everybody, and then whispers goodnight to her bow. She's now being dragged back by guards, because, she just assassinated the president. But she lifts her arm up, twisting her neck to bite down on the nightlock. But instead, her teeth sink into flesh. She's confused, but looks up to see Peeta standing right in front of her. And he is holding her nightlock pill. He is holding her way out of this. She is yelling at him to let her go. But he says, "I can't." She is screaming, thrashing at this point, calling for Gale to shoot her, but he doesn't. She is then thrown into her room that she stayed at during the Hunger Games in the training center and locked in there. The bed is stripped of sheets. There's nothing in the closet. She struggles to get up and take off her Mockingjay suit because she probably has a couple of broken fingers, honestly. She also has some bruises, but her skin is what hurts the most. Remember, it's delicate, new skin. So with all the thrashing she did, it's been shredded like tissue paper, and blood is seeping through. No one shows up, not even a medic, but she doesn't care. She just crawls onto the mattress hoping she'll bleed to death. When she realizes she's not going to die like this, she gets up and takes a shower with the gentlest setting possible. She recites in her head, "My name is Katniss Everdeen. I should be dead. Why am I not dead? It would be best for everybody if I was dead." They were never able to truly show this in the movies, but Katniss is done at this point, clearly. She's given up. She doesn't care. She wants to be out of this whole situation. When she eventually gets out of the bathroom and goes back into her room, her Mockingjay suit is gone, but a paper robe, a meal, and some medicine waits for her. She takes all the medicine, eats the food, so she can think clearly about how she will end her own life. But with her being so heavily watched, she knows once again it is the Capitol's privilege to take her life. Let's talk about this real fast. Snow got to live out his days in the Rose Garden, arguably his favorite place in nice clothes, and Katniss was sent here to a place that has probably haunted her and is left in a paper robe. Even though she was the face of your rebellion, she is the reason people are free right now. Yet she's getting treated worse than Snow was. With no other option, Katniss decides to just lay on the bed, not eat food, not take medicine, not do anything. Just lay there. But then she starts to experience the morphling withdrawal, and now she's doing anything to get those pills that she had thrown to the ground before, and is hoping maybe she'll just have a slow death from being addicted to morphling. Skip a couple days, she is doing good on this plan, and starts to sing constantly. Weeks have gone by, she has no clue what is taking so long. But she is skinnier than ever, even though sometimes she does eat out of desperation. A few more days go by, and she is sure she is fading out of this life, but then the morphling doses start to get smaller. She starts to worry that they may have other plans for her and another way to use her, and she refuses to go back to that life, and makes a promise to herself that if she can't die in this room, she will take the first opportunity she has outside of it. After 2 days of doing nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, Haymitch comes in saying that her trial is over, and they are free to go home. She has no clue what he means because her home is gone. District 12 was blown up. It doesn't matter though, because she's too weak to move. A team has to come in there, rehydrate her, feed her, and clean her up. Then they take her to the roof where a hovercraft is waiting for them. She's now sitting across from Haymitch and Plutarch. This is when Plutarch starts to explain everything that has happened over the past month or so that she's been locked in that room. After she shot Coin, there was pandemonium, as we would expect. Snow had then died by either choking or being crushed by the crowd. They don't really know. Then an emergency election was held and Paler was elected. Plutarch is the Secretary of Communications now, which means he sets all the programming for the TV. And the first big event was her trial, where he was also a witness in her defense. But the doctor, who fell asleep during most of their sessions, did the most work by presenting her as hopelessly shell-shocked. She will now have to continue sessions with him over the phone, and she will be contained in 12 until further notice. No one really knows what to do with the Mockingjay now that the war is over. Plutarch is like, you would get a call if there was another war, though. No one laughs. It's not... Plutarch, please. She asks, are you preparing one? He explains, no. We're in a sweet period where everybody agrees that the recent horrors that happened should never happen again. But we're stupid beings with short memories and a gift for self-defense. But who knows? Maybe this was the last war. They then drop Plutarch off in District 3, and these two head off to District 12. Haymitch has basically been sent back to keep an eye on Katniss, because her mother has decided to start a hospital in District 4. Her mom has had a lot of growth during these books. They've gotten closer, but they were never that close, and so just the sight of them to each other reminds them of Prim, and I think they both just want that separation. Her mother definitely doesn't win Mom of the Year awards by any means, but she's not an awful person, I guess. I don't know. Her mom is such a complex character, but she's just not a good mom to Katniss. We know that. Because once again, when her daughter kind of needs her, she's just like, I'm gonna go start a hospital in 4, I think. But really, it's because she can't face the memories of Prim that would be in District 12. They land in the Victor's village to find that half of the houses have lights on, including hers and Haymitch's, but not Peeta's. Meaning that other people from the district have moved into the District 12 village. There's people here doing cleanup right now, trying to make District 12 a livable place again. She finds a fire already lit in her home and settles by it, and Haymitch says he will come and check on her tomorrow, but she highly doubts that because she can already hear the liquor bottles clinking in his bag. She falls asleep by the fire and wakes up to Greasy Say cooking breakfast. Greasy Say's special needs granddaughter is also there as well. Katniss has always been fond of her granddaughter, so it's kind of a comfort to have them both there. It's very sweet. After breakfast, she cleans up, she leaves, but she's back at dinner time to cook once again. And this is Katniss's life for a month. Haymitch never visits, he's lost in drinking, and Katniss doesn't move from her spot really, ever. But eventually, once it's warmed up, Greasy Say does her best to convince Katniss to go outside and hunt. She doesn't have a bow, and Greasy Say just points down the hall. She goes down, goes to the closet, and finds her bow in there, as well as her father's jacket. But she just takes her father's jacket and curls up on the couch and falls asleep. She wakes up in the early morning with a start, because she heard a shovel scraping sound from outside. She gets up, she's going outside to yell at whoever's making this noise at this hour, only to see Peeta with a wheelbarrow next to him, filled with 5 scraggly bushes. He explains that the doctor wouldn't let him go until yesterday, and also says that the doctor needs her to pick up the phone because he can't keep lying for her forever. Peeta actually looks well. He's thin and covered in burn scars, but his eyes have lost that tortured look that they had. She goes to brush the hair out of her face, only to realize that it is matted into clumps. And she starts to get defensive and goes, "What are you doing here?" He explains that he went to the woods this morning and dug this plant up to plant it here for her. She's about to yell at Peeta because it's a rose, but then she realizes, no, it's not a rose, it's a smaller type of rose, it's a primrose. She runs straight inside, shaking, going up the stairs, she trips, she gets herself back up, and then goes to her room, where one white rose is in the vase with dried flowers around it still. She grabs the vase and runs downstairs to throw it in the fire, and then goes back upstairs to open the windows to get the scent out of that room. The scent is still on her clothes, so she gets them off to take a shower, but as she's taking them off, skin flakes the sides of playing cards are coming off with them because she hasn't changed in months. She scrubs herself clean and then takes quite a while to comb out her hair, and when she comes downstairs, she finds Greasy Say making breakfast again. She's holding the clothes she is wearing so she can burn them in the fire, and then she asks Greasy Say how to get the scent out of her nails, and Greasy Say hands her a knife, so she peels her own nails off. Do you know how painful that is? Oh my word. Over breakfast, Katniss asks Greasy Say, "Do you know where Gale went?" And she tells her that Gale got some fancy job in too. Katniss expects to feel anger or longing, but is only filled with relief. Then she says, "I'm going hunting." On her way to her and Gale's meeting place, she has to pass through town, and she sees all the people gathering up all the dead bodies, and sees the mass grave they have dug in the center of the meadow to put all the bodies in. She makes it to the rock her and Gale always met at, and she is out of breath by just walking there, but it doesn't feel right sitting there all by herself, so she's just hoping that magically Gale will somehow show up here, even though he's in District 2. The spurt of energy she got from seeing the primrose has worn off now, so she has to catch a ride back to her house with one of the carts that's hauling dead bodies because she is so exhausted. And then she just climbs back onto her sofa. Her head then snaps up when she hears a hiss, and it takes her a while to figure out that this is real, because there is no way that Buttercup made it back. She tells him it was a waste of a trip, she's not here. Buttercup just hisses at her, and she says, she's not here, you can hiss all you want, but Prim's not here. And when Buttercup hears Prim's name, his ears perk up and he starts meowing. She starts yelling at Buttercup to get out as she's throwing pillows at this cat. She gets to her feet after throwing a couple to get better aim and then just breaks into tears, saying she's dead, and she begins to wail. And Buttercup joins her in this. Hours later, when she goes to bed, Buttercup follows her up and stays by her side all night, like he used to do with Prim. The next day, she ends up cleaning up Buttercup, and they end up being a comfort to each other now. Katniss finally opens the letter that her mother had given Haymitch to give to her when they left the capital, and calls her. And they weep together over the phone. Peeta then shows up with greasy say and a warm loaf of bread. Then, slowly, Katniss begins to come back to life. She tells her doctor about this idea for a book she wants to make, so he sends her paper and all the supplies she needs to do that. So she starts working on something kind of similar to the family book, but this one is to remember all of those they've lost in the past few years. Peeta and Katniss add plenty, and eventually Haymitch joins them and adds 23 years worth of tributes he had to mentor, plus some others that we know of. Peeta and her grow closer together again. There are still moments where he has to grab onto something as a flashback occurs, but for the most part, he's his old self. She still wakes up from nightmares screaming, but Peeta now once again is there to comfort her. Then eventually, they kiss again, and she feels that hunger that she had felt in the 75th arena. And she knows that this is what she needs to survive. She didn't need Gale, who matched her fire. She needed the dandelion in the spring that promises that life can go on after losses and be good. So after this kiss, when he whispers, "You love me, real or not real?" she says, "Real." It's so beautiful. And now we have the epilogue. Basically, it's just her watching her two kiddos play in the meadow that she waited a long time to have. Now, I know there are some people who take Katniss saying she doesn't want to have kids when she's talking to Gale in the early books as she never wanted to have kids, but she meant it as she didn't want to have kids in the world they were currently living in, and it still took her a while after they found peace for her to agree to this. Like 10 to 15 years is what they said. She waited a long time to make sure she was ready for this. She was so maternal to Prim and Rue that we just see throughout these books. It's not a shocker that she one day had her own kids. I think it's such a sweet ending for her. It's proof that she finally feels safe. When she gets worked up about her past now, she plays this game with herself, thinking of every act of goodness she has seen other people do, and that calms her down. She makes the joke that even though this game can be a little tedious, there are far worse games to play. And that, right there, my friends, is the end of the Hunger Games. Let me fix one thing. See, don't worry, he's alive. He's on the living side of the board. He's in District 4 with Annie with their kid. I forgot to mention that Annie had a kid, but yeah, they had a kid. So he has a child he'll never get to meet. Actually, never. Sorry, he gets to meet him. It's fine. It's all fine. It's all fine. Anyways, did you like it? As you can tell, I never write an outro for these things. But what I want to say is just thank y'all so much for all the support on this. It means so much to me. This is my favorite series to talk about, and the fact that the first one is now the most viewed video on this channel is crazy, and I so appreciate that. We also reached 10K during this series. There's just a whole bunch of milestones that we hit, and I appreciate all of them so much, and all of y'all who have tagged along for this, and I hope you stay around, and I can still entertain you after I stop talking about the Hunger Games. I do maybe at one point want to get to the other books, but we'll probably cover some other books and series before we get back to this world. I know. Look, I don't really need a break from this world. I just have some other things that I'm really excited to talk about, okay? But with that being said, I do want to hear from y'all. What are some book series you want me to cover? Do we want to stay like dystopian vibes? Do we want to stay like 2010s vibes? What are some new books you would want to hear me talk about in this fashion? I'm down for all of that. And also, any books you just want to see me read in general for a reading vlog or something like that. I really just want to know what y'all want to see. I have some plans, but your input is always greatly appreciated. But with all that being said, I'm gonna go cry and watch the Hunger Games again after I just talked about it for, have I been working on this for like 3 months now? Jeez. I've been like ingrained in the Hunger Games for 3 months and I still crave to watch the movies, okay? That's how bad this obsession of mine is. So, that's what I'm gonna go do. Bye, y'all. What was that? Okay, bye, y'all. But Lime is just getting more and more frustrated. Get it, Limestone. We finally make it to the day. And it's basically a little holographic? Hologram? I just want to talk to the inventor of loud cars. And by talk, I mean she truly believes that all of these deaf slash slow... She's about... And Gale, who took 2 bullets... Okay. And Gale, who took 2 bullets... Peeta, Joanna, Ina Barrio... Katniss finally... Cars!